Up, everybody? How's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Sweet. Let's change the screen so you can see me. What's up? How's it going? To the people listening to this on podcast in the future, if I decide to put it up on the podcast, what's up? To the people who are just listening to this in the future because they're sleeping in Europe right now, what's up? To the people who are actually tuning in and watching this right now, welcome. So today is going to be a special one, as you can see up on the screen here. I've got Mikey on the left, Swol on the right. I almost want to say like some stupid shit like if you don't know who they are, then fuck you. But like that's not true. Or like you already know what it is. Like that's you already know what it is kind of a fuck you to the person who doesn't know what it is. Not really. But I mean, it could be perceived that way. No, look, you don't have to know who any of these people are. You could be popping in on this for the first time. Right? The internet's like conversations between buddies, but played out to strangers. That's the weird part. So to the strangers popping in, I want to say welcome. If you just like to hate watch Eamon, welcome. You'll love to hate watch me as well. But for most people here, you see on the left one of the most important teachers of our generation. And on the right, you see someone who has been a very principled advocate and activist over his time in activism and advocacy. Like he's got various things that he cares about controversially recently for like the last year or two. He's been going hard on the gender shit. And so I got schooled by him recently. According to Rose's Painted Red podcast on Twitter or X, I looked, she or they or he or whatever the fuck said that I should be embarrassed because Swole was schooling me on how intersex is not what most people think it is or whatever. And I said, I'm not embarrassed. You know why I'm not embarrassed? My identity is not so heavily invested in this. I don't obsess over this. I don't research this to the degree that you apparently do. I've got a lot of other research threads. But, you know, it's X, and some people just have hard-ons to talk about certain things all the time. And that person goes, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Yeah. But I would be embarrassed if I went around telling people that they should be embarrassed for having normie takes on intersex because they haven't been enlightened by Swole yet. So Rose's Red podcast, I'd be embarrassed for that. But, you know, it's the internet. We're all embarrassing. We're all cringe. We're all stupid, whatever. It's just the internet. Fuck it. It's just a party at the end of the world. So I said Mikey's very important, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into it. There's lots of content on this channel of me talking with the two of them separately. This is the first time it's been the two of them just talking to each other. For that reason, it's very interesting. If you're not interested by that, click off, motherfucker. We're going to go right now. I don't know what we're watching. I know it said that I was a certain amount into this video already, but I actually haven't seen any of it except for maybe the first 10 seconds. I only went clicking through the video for the thumbnail. So what I have to say about this is I look forward to hearing what they are going to get into. I know they're going to get into libidinal economy. I know that in a sort of sense, this is going to be Eamon, aka Swole, testing his knowledge with Mikey. Mikey's going to get to break down some concepts. We'll learn some theory. They'll talk about their problems with the left or their journeys with it. They'll say a bunch of shit I don't agree with. I don't endorse anything Swole has ever said. Never will. He doesn't go far enough in any case. Never does he go far enough. And then when he does go far enough, he goes way too far. So Swole and I will never agree on anything ever. If you want to cancel Swole because of something he said, I probably believe something worse. Fuck belief. I just am worse as a human being. Let's start there. I'm just way worse. Swole's precious. Like he might called people retards on X or whatever, but no, he's a precious guy. He's got a big heart. He cares about regular working people. He cares about regular working people who come from all walks of life and identify in all kinds of ways. But he's also just got that kind of like, thing called intellectual integrity. He gets combative, and ultimately we disagree about his combativeness. I think that he's Amy Therese without a following. That's what I think Swol is. He's the libs of TikTok account without a following. But it would be cool if he did have a following. And I'm joking. He does have a following. It's just not that big. A lot of people are following him. They just don't like to click like, even though they do like what he's saying, because they are scared, and rightfully so. And Swol might be a lot of things, but he's not scared. So who knows what's going to get said in this? I have no freaking clue. So yeah, I'm excited to know who's going to actually be here in this stream with me. I don't know if Nance is even here yet. Nance is not going to be on the live side, but he'll hopefully be in the chat. I think for some reason I have some kind of an impression that maybe I'll see, maybe we'll see fucking, I don't know, Ian. That'd be really sick to see Ian. Who else might pop in? I don't know. It's going to be someone from the US though, right? Can't be somebody. Oh, let's see. We got a couple people. Let's see who they are. We've got, Kolith, Mindscape, and we've got Benzer. Well, that's awesome. Hey! Kolith says, I was gonna watch anyways. So yeah, I was kind of hoping that somebody who was already planning on watching this would be like, dude, that's dope. Yeah, look at this. I'll put it up on the screen. Actually, it's not gonna work the way I just changed things. Oh yeah, you can kind of see it. Benzer said, the little I've seen of him wasn't a barrage of canceling content. Don't see how he's comparable to libs of TikTok. He's comparable because he spends a lot of time pointing out the insanity. He just doesn't spend nearly as much time, and therefore he has less of a following. Also because he's not a lib doing libs of TikTok. I mean, because that's the thing is if I'm not mistaken, I think that libs of TikTok account is kind of like a somewhat liberal conservative type person, Oh, and by the way, Minecraft, what do I need to say about it? Everyone knows about this game, right? You run around, you hit things with a pickaxe. I like to do it on survival. And so, I can die, I can lose everything. So there's some stakes. So it's fun in that sense. And I'm just going to run around in Minecraft and fuck some shit up. Probably rocks. I'll probably just mostly be mining. I probably just want some diamonds, but I might get distracted and do some other things. I'm not usually a gamer, but today I wanna, so I will. And the fact is Minecraft is, when I burnt out in the month of July due to some things that happened, I decided, you know what? I'll just spend a few days playing Minecraft. And so I'm going to go back to it now. It's been like a couple of weeks of camping trips and family reunions and all kinds of stuff. And now that I'm getting settled back in, I was like, you know what? I'll just play a little bit. So let's go. Let's do it. Full steam ahead. Oh, I forgot. I want to shout out for the guy who is the man behind the soundbite I'm about to push. He just passed away this week. Get out, you laborer! Oh, that's the wrong soundbite. Get out, you laborer. That's what that one was. I don't even know what that's from, but I like it. No, here's the one I wanted to play. This guy just passed away.
Get your hand off my penis! Why did you do this to me? Pop in the car. Get some cups. For what reason? What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
A succulent Chinese meal? Yeah, that guy just passed away. I forget what his name is, but he's an icon. If you haven't seen that actual video clip, it went viral. He's fighting cops, and he's saying, get your hands off me. His name is Jack Carlson with a K. Jack Carlson, who became famous for his arrest during a succulent Chinese meal, has died at the age of 82. So on Instagram, I reposted it, and I said, rest in peace, you absolute icon. I don't know. It's just something Nance tune me into at some point, and so.
Get your hand off my penis! Why did you do this to me?
Why did you do this
For
to
what
me?
reason? What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
A succulent Chinese meal? A succulent Chinese meal? What is that? That's amazing. I love it. It's fucking epic. All right. Let's go. Let's do it, though. I'm ready. Oh, let's hear it. There's enough people here at this point that I feel I can get us started. The only thing that makes me want to not start it is I don't have enough likes yet. Okay. I need more likes. So I'm not going to sit here and hold up the show, but I will start a poll that says, for people listening from a podcast, if you don't understand the whole poll thing, don't worry about it. It's just like people can vote. So I'm going to say, did you like this video? Did you click the like button? If I say, do you like this? Then people just think I'm asking if they like it. But if I say, did you click the like button? People can say yes. People can say no. I'm going to add another option that says, nope, hope you fail forever. Go back to work. I'm just going to leave it. Yeah, it'll be hope you fail. Go back to work. Because I don't have enough character count for all those words. And the reason I give that option is because any engagement is better than no engagement. People usually fill it out sarcastically. Nope, not yet. Will be one option. All right, go ahead and vote. Go ahead and vote. Let me see the votes. Did you do it yet, folks? Did you do it yet? All right. What's going on there? His voice was so regal. He was made a meme. Yeah, he had a radio voice for sure. The best part was, this is a democracy. This is Democracy Manifest. For real. Actually, that would be a good clip as well, wouldn't it, Benzer? And then Coleth's Mindset said, I feel like I've heard it somewhere ages ago, but don't remember. Yeah, well, we'll miss him. Sean says, hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. What's up, Sean? Is this a Sean I know, or is this a different Sean? And maybe there's multiple Seans I know. I don't know. Benzer said, R.I.P. a legend. Yeah, absolutely. That guy's a legend. Because he's often posting about gender. Oh, yeah. So that's why. That's why it's like Libs of TikTok. Okay, let's go. It's like Marxist of TikTok. Well, that's the thing. Is like Libs of TikTok is supposed to be like watching for cringe liberals, right? That's the point. And liberal in the American colloquial sense, we're talking normie talk here. So just people who are left side of the aisle in the United States. That's the kind of liberal that it's talking about. Of course, that's why I say that, this conservative who posts for that account is probably a liberal as well by internet, political, historical kind of standards, European standards, whatever. But with that said, I'm going to get going. Mikey, what's up? Good to see you. Oh, quick thing. I just got back from a movie that I saw with Elton and his wife and a couple other people. Some of you might even know who Holly is. So yeah, Elton and Holly and Bert. Y'all know who Bert is, right? I'll play the Bert commercial for my Patreon at some point. But right now, I just want to say the movie we watched is one I watched yesterday. It's been a long time since I immediately went back to the theater and rewatched a movie. This is the first time that I've called quite a few of my friends and said, hey, don't find out anything about this movie. Don't watch trailers. Don't read descriptions. Just go in blind and watch it as soon as possible. The fewer spoilers you have, the more enjoyable it will be, but also it'll still be enjoyable even if you do read the description and watch the trailer. It doesn't have super gory scenes. It doesn't have rape scenes. It doesn't have... I just have to say that, it's super intense. There is adrenaline. There are high stakes, but there's also beauty and love and psychological depths. And so it's a psychological thriller of sorts. And the name of it is called, what's it called? Trap. Just go watch Trap. Go watch Trap. Theory Underground is going to have at least one Trap related TU Film Club event in the near future. So that's my plug. Don't look it up. Just go watch it. Mikey. Also, Mikey's seminar starts this week. If you don't know about the seminar, you've not been paying attention to the PSAs that I've been playing at the end of my videos, or you haven't seen those. Well, Mikey's seminar started In less than a month, we've gotten him to $276 a month, tripling the size of his Patreon, just for people to be able to attend one lecture per month that he's doing just for the seminar here at Theory Underground. It's something I've organized. It's part of my 10-year project to free Mikey from wage labor. I announced it years ago. It's called #FreeMikey. The Theory Underground business plan has always been about freeing Mikey. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who knows what's up. If you haven't already become a subscriber to Mikey's seminar, there's benefits. You're gonna be missing some things if you don't do it. And if you're in a really rough spot and super broke, I have a scholarship at Theory Underground, so you can get a subscription at a discount, and that's a scholarship, meaning it's a write-off, meaning I might actually someday meet someone who's wealthy who wants to reimburse me for some of the things that I give away for free. That's all that means. So, go fill it out if you care about that. You can find it on the website if you look hard enough, if you care. Okay? Mikey the man himself in the chat, baby. Yeah, well, let's go.
Okay, today we are here with Michael Downs, aka the Dangerous Maybe of the Dangerous Maybe blog. Michael is a working class, philosopher, we could say. He's got a lot of cool things to say, especially in terms of Lacan, Marx, and Zizek, and a bit of Hegel, maybe.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah, but mostly Lacan and Zizek, and specifically how it relates to Marx and organizing for socialism. And in this case, we're going to be talking about the workplace and how that relates to the struggle for socialism, and specifically the article he wrote, which is wage labor and jouissance, why the left needs Zizek. So I guess to kick it off, where's my notes here? So my understanding of the article in general, you're basically trying to make the case that leftists, socialists we need to understand psychoanalysis, and particularly through the lens of Lacan and Zizek's interpretation of Lacan, and that this can help us with the problem.
So probably worth mentioning that this piece that he's talking about, Wage Labor Jouissance, is freely available on Medium, but you can also read it in Underground Theory if you have an actual copy, physical copy, or if you just sign up for the regular Theory Underground seminar, the one I do with Ann, then you'll get a free digital copy. As a bonus, eventually we'll be giving out all kinds of bonuses, lots of bonuses. There's a special kind of person in our lives. We give them all the bonuses. So yeah, that's important. Wage labor and jouissance, though, it comes as a response to being asked all the time, oh, what's the point of that? Or, oh, Lacan, what's the point? By Marxists. Marxists seem to be the haters when it comes to Lacan. That's not always the case. There's a couple of people who like Lacan and Marx. Some of them suck. Some of them are awesome. You can never really know whether a person will suck or be awesome based on the thinker they're into. And some of them are even somewhat decent at talking about both. But no, Mikey's on a different level with that. He's like a protege of Todd McGowan. And so, he's based in Why Theory Pilled. Let's go.
Psychoanalysis, and particularly through the lens of Lacan and Zizek's interpretation of Lacan. And that this can help us with the problem of worker solidarity and class consciousness in particular. And that the main problem we face as socialists is a problem of of this class consciousness. That ruling class ideology is kind of getting in the way, and in that Zizek's understanding of psychoanalysis and particularly death drive and jouissance will help us overcome this. And we need to understand. Marx has helped us understand worker material conditions and consciousness kind of at a rational level and a material level. But we need also to perhaps understand how workers are going through their day at an unconscious level and what motivates them unconsciously. So to use a quote from quoting your article here, you said, to be a Marxist today, one has to go through Lacan and Zizek, and I think that's a quote borrowed from someone else. So
I took a quote and then modified
yes,
it. Yeah.
yes. So we need to go through Lacan and Zizek to be a Marxist today. So can you expand on that?
Sure. So, like,
Before I let Mikey say a goddamn word, I want you all to meet my new boy. I'm sorry, bud. He was gonna nap on my foot. What? That's right. I have a baby boy here in my hands for people who don't have eyes on screen. He's just a little guy. You can still hold him by the scruff of his neck like his mama, because he's only 8 weeks old. Sorry, bud. I know you're getting a little too big for that, right? He's like, no, I want to go back to sleep. Leave me alone. All right, well, that's post alone, because he likes to post up all by his lonesome, right? Well, it's just a nickname. He'll have a better name soon. We're torn between Soren Kierkegaard and Thomas of Aquinas, who I just found out today is Thomas of Aquinas. I always thought it was Thomas Aquinas. I'm such a dork. All right, let's go.
like part of it goes back, like, we understand that with Marx's critique of capital, which is still, I mean, it's still the most fundamental critique of capital we have, right? What Marx was doing, and this is the brilliant move of it, is he's doing an intrinsic critique of political economy, right? What that means is, like, he's taking Adam Smith and David Ricardo and the founders of political economy. He's taking them at their word and saying, great, okay, I accept your basic premises. Now let's actually investigate it in a way that comes from the inside, that's intrinsic. I accept the fundamental propositions of how you guys view political economy, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this kind of Hegelian dialectical critique. Now, of course, he turns Hegel on his head, because he's going to focus on material conditions instead of abstract categories of thought like Hegel does in Science of Logic, right? But he's going to take this dialectical thing, which is, I'm going to analyze things in terms of what if we go to Hegel and we look at phenomenology of spirit, he's got a whole phenomenology of investigating phenomena, and at first he takes them at their word. He says, okay, since certainty says it is this, perception says it is this, understanding says it is this, right? And you take them at their word, but when you actually think it through dialectically, you find that these modes of experience actually are shot through with contradictions, and they end up being the very opposite of what they say they are, right? So by their own criteria, they fail to live up to their own identity, their own you could say ideal image of themselves, right? And Marx does the same thing with political economy. He says, okay, so Adam Smith and Ricardo, they say, the commodity is this and value is this and all that. And what he does in Capital is show how this system actually is structured by these intrinsic deadlocks or contradictions that ultimately, as we know, like the basic idea here is that these contradictions are eventually going to build in intensity, build in trouble, build in conflict, and the system's going to eventually implode on itself, because these contradictions built into it are not something that it can get rid of. They're not externalities, right? They're self-defeating structures within it. And so this is this great thing that Marx is tapped into. And again, I don't think we have a better critique of capitalism since Marx. But one of the things that Marx takes over from Smith and Ricardo on some kind of implicit level is this idea of homo economicus, of the subject that's rooted in, again, rationality and pursues its self-interest, right? This is the famous image of the liberal subject, right? And in some ways, obviously, Marx would challenge this, of course, but Marx doesn't have a robust theory of subjectivity the way that someone like Freud has it, or the existentialists like Heidegger and Sartre or Lacan, right? These guys are thinkers of subjectivity, and even, of course, Heidegger. No, it's not subjectivity, it's Dasein, but putting that aside, right? They're thinkers of what it is to be human, and they're all engaging in some way, shape, or form, whether it's explicitly or disavowed. They're doing an ontology of the human subject. And for Freud and Lacan, what that means is thinking through what they would call libidinal economy, right? So basically, like if you're approaching the critique of capitalism, knowing your Marx, right? You're going to say you're going to have the critique of political economy, but if you're approaching it from the psychoanalytic perspective with Freud and Lacan, you're going to say, all right, basically libidinal economy and political economy are intertwined. That to really analyze one, you need the other. And this is one of these basic theoretical points of view that I accept at this point. I can't think one without the other, having studied both, right? And so on the one hand, there's no way to really understand our fantasies, our desires, our forms of enjoyment. We can't understand that type of stuff without understanding the mode of production, the society we live in, our economic class relations, right? All of that is part of how we desire, how we fantasize, how we enjoy. On the other hand, we really can't understand the logic of the economy without understanding how desire, subjectivity, fantasy, the role these are playing in the reproduction of capital. So that's this position that really Slavoj Žižek's the one. There were other thinkers before him, right? Like Francois Lyotard, right? John Francois Lyotard. And he wrote a book called Libidinal Economy. And you have thinkers in the Frankfurt School who were mixing Freud with the critique of capitalism. But I don't think this was systematized and clearly thought through at the structural level as good as until Zizek came along. I think he's been the best at this. But you have other thinkers who in some way, shape, or form were taking their cues from him. So you have Todd McGowan, you have Samo Tomcic, right? Alenka Zupancic, Adrian Johnston, right? Dwayne Roussel. You have all these thinkers who are thinking about capitalism in terms of these Lacanian concepts, and I'm a product of that as well. So basically,
I think it's public information. Something's wrong with Adrian Johnston. Like, we don't know what, but thoughts and prayers, everybody. Thoughts and prayers. He's away.
That's kind of where we're coming from, which is to say, the thing that we would want to add to this discussion of Marxism and political economy is saying, look, this idea of the liberal subject that is primarily oriented around rationality and pursuing its self-interest, this is not the actual human subject, right? And if we're operating, when it comes to, how should we organize? How should we try to fight for an emancipatory future, right? If we're operating with the assumption of the liberal homo economicus, we're going to get into a lot of trouble, because that's not really how we primarily function in our day-to-day lives. And so stuff like death drive and all of this, these are ways of correcting this idea. Of course we have rationality, of course we pursue our self-interest, but there's this other stuff going on that you cannot just reduce us to saying those are our primary impulses. And if we don't understand the unconscious, and we don't understand how we get enjoyment from undermining ourselves, from self-destructive activities, then we're not going to really understand what's going on with the human, and therefore we're not going to know how to appeal to it at the most basic level. So, okay, I'll stop now. Add any comments, whatever you got.
Okay, let's take. We could just take historical examples. How could we say, or how might we say, libidinal economy and jouissance played into the Russian Revolution, the 1848 revolutions, the American Revolution?
It's a great question. That's a great question.
Chinese-Cuban Revolution.
Good job, Swol.
How does psychoanalysis.
Well, I mean, that's where like you would need somebody who's done like a focus, because what counts as desire, what counts as fantasy, what the forms of enjoyment are, they're all going to be historically specific, right? So that's a work unto itself. What I can tell you about is like what I know from my own experience living, in American consumer society.
Smart answer.
And how we are hooked on capital, the ways in which, even if it goes against our self-interest, we nonetheless desire capitalism and help to reproduce it on the unconscious level because of the partial enjoyment we get from this system. We can know that there's all kinds of issues with it. We can hate our jobs. We can hate the struggles, the economic struggles we go through, and yet,
oh no! Oh my god! Oh my god! I got wrecked. I am stuck in Minecraft. I'm sorry, everybody. If you actually care about the game, then you saw what happened. But if you don't care at all, I'm even more sorry, because I don't want this in any way to detract from this interview. But yeah, no, I just got wrecked. I got my shit wrecked. And it's because I was like trying to kill this zombie with a sword, and then all of a sudden I was holding like zombie meat, and I was hitting the zombie with zombie meat instead of the sword. And I was like, wait, where'd my sword go in my inventory? And then I was like, I got to get away from this. And then I turned around and there was another zombie and I was fucked. So
reluctant to do anything that would restructure society in a way to decommodify it, deconsumerize it, right? They would resist this stuff. And so part of it is figuring out like, okay, we know that capitalism involves structural exploitation. We know that alienation. We know these things, but why do people? It's this famous thing. Like why do human beings fight for their oppression like it's their freedom? Right? It's because we're split from within. Right? Like our self-interest is not our only interest. There's just a self-destructive interest we have, which is to say, we get enjoyment, and maybe we should say like, okay, this distinction between pleasure and enjoyment, or pleasure and jouissance is the French term.
Yeah,
right?
What is pleasure? What is jouissance?
Right. For us, I mean, on our colloquial everyday sense, pleasure and enjoyment are like basically absolute synonyms, right? And so when we start making this big conceptual distinction between pleasure and enjoyment, it gets confusing. But what we have in mind here is Freud, throughout the beginning and middle period of his.
Oh, I just realized I had so much stuff and I was stuck down there, and so much important stuff. And I have no idea how to get back to where my body is. So all those items are going to disappear if I can't find them soon. Oh my God. This is why I didn't want to play this fucking game. I got stuck down in this dungeon and I can't find my way back up. Fucking dungeons. I just wanted diamonds. That's all I wanted.
Work. His whole thing was about how we are organized around pleasure. Now, it's very important to understand. Pleasure for Freud means homeostasis in the body. It's when you don't have overexcitation, you don't have pain, you're not overly stimulated. It's more or less what I take both of us to being, right. We're calm, cool, collected. We can have a chat. We're not overly stimulated. And for Freud, that's what our libidinal economies, that's what our, basically our central nervous systems, if we're going to talk like that, it's what they're seeking. It's this state of calm, this state of frictionless peace, of relaxation, right? And for Freud, he thought that's what the aim of our bodies, of our central nervous systems, of our libidinal economies was always chasing. And he thought this up into the point that he wrote Beyond the Pleasure Principle, right? So the pleasure principle is essentially return to a state of pleasure as quickly as you can, right? So the way to, like, the problem is, if you try to do this, like it's all activities and it's all impulses that we would deem unsocial, right? So if you got to take a shit, the pleasure principle just says take a shit. Well, early on through potty training, we learned like, no, you can't just take a shit whenever you want. There's a time and place to do it. So what this socialization process is doing is it's making the pleasure principle conform itself to the reality principle. There's a way that we do things in society. You can't just seek immediate gratification, which is you can't just seek an immediate return to pleasure, to homeostasis. You have to prolong it. If it's not appropriate, you have to shit in the right place at the right time.
Fuck that real anarchist shit where they want.
Right.
This is what we learn as babies.
Yes, that's what socialization is basically us, taking our basic biological or libidinal impulses and understanding that in society, you can't just seek their immediate gratification. You have to mediate them through protocols, norms, values, etc., right? Customs. And that's what socialization entails. Okay, that all makes sense. But what Freud realized, especially dealing with his patients that were coming back from World War I, who had what back then they would call shell shock, right? Post-traumatic stress syndrome. He found that these guys who had been to war, they were doing something in analysis that the pleasure principle and the reality principle couldn't make sense of. And so what it was every night they were having nightmares of the traumas and the terrible situations they had dealt with in the war. And what this repetitious loop was doing was filling them with overstimulation, overexcitation. And for Freud, for us, we go, okay, what's the big deal? For him, it runs completely counter to his most basic theory of how our libidinal economies work. It's not the pleasure principle, because the pleasure principle is trying to get rid of excitation, right? Whereas these dreams were just constantly keeping them, when they're asleep, they're stimulated by the nightmare, and then throughout their day, it's a burden, right? And so he started to look at ways in which we overstimulate ourselves repetitiously and unconsciously. It seems like there's some sort of alien force that takes hold of us that gets us in these repetitious loops that fill us with a type of enjoyment that we would say is unpleasurable, that is destabilizing, right? Unpleasurable. And yet what Freud would find is there's also a trace of enjoyment in these situations where, and this is one of the other examples he gives, is you could have a patient who's gone through psychoanalysis and they've made all kinds of progress, but as the analysis is eventually, when it starts to wrap up.
I see Derek Varn say some shit on Threads recently. I don't even know why he's on that fucking platform, but I post my shit out on it every once in a while, but he actually communicates with it like it's a real platform. I don't know, maybe it will be, but it's cool because it shows up on the Instagram feed. So, I get it, but no, he was talking shit about how you can't, I don't know, it was some shit you can't take seriously a person who, I don't know, this is maybe this is my read on it. I was picking, maybe I'm reading between the lines. I don't know. I don't want to do a terrible injustice right now, but basically he can't take seriously someone who cares about rigor versus sloppiness or anything, and actually thinks Freud matters, or Freud's take on something matters, or I forget what it was. It was a dunk on psychoanalysis. I saw it recently. I saw that, Varn. And so, we're 1 point of removal here. Mikey is on Swol shit. Swol and Varn talk. I know that Swol cares about Varn's opinions about things, and I just wanted to point out that I appreciate you, Swol, for trying to get the other side here. And also, I understand it's not just the other side. Swole is genuinely interested in this stuff. So, yeah, no, there is this sort of Marxist disdain of psychoanalysis that you sometimes see. And I get it, man. I get it. There's a lot of people who just study that, and they think that Freud is gospel. And, here's a cokehead, dude. He's a cokehead who is excited and had some good ideas and some profoundly bad ideas, and it is what it is. But some people are straight up biblical about Freud, and yeah, it can go a little too far. But If you think you can dispense with it, if you don't think you have to study it to get a lay of the land or a feel for the game, I don't know what to tell you.
It's like they destroy all the progress they made, and it's almost like they're back at start again, right? And Freud's like, that makes no fucking sense, right? What he ended up positing is a counter principle to the pleasure principle, which is the death drive, which is to say there's some other aspect of ourselves that gets that is invested in, that gets enjoyment from activities that are bad for us, that go against our self-interest, that fill our lives with drama, that fill our lives with frustration, that fill our lives with burden. And there's a weird twisted type of pleasure that's not the pleasure Freud was originally talking about, but a kind of pleasure in pain, a pleasure in burden, a pleasure in frustration, right? And that's what Lacan is going to call jouissance. And what you find is that there's all types of things. You see it with your family, you see it with your friends. You usually can spot their jouissance better than they can, because if you point it out to them, they're going to go, no, I fucking hate that. I can't stand that shit. But what you find is they repetitiously and unconsciously put themselves in a position to have that stimulation. And so these impulses that are self-destructive and self-undermining, this is what we call death drive. And the stimulation you get from this is jouissance, and that's the difference between pleasure and jouissance. Pleasure is homeostasis, calm, equilibrium in the body. Jouissance is overstimulation, excessive energy.
Oh, fuck!
That the subject wants to not identify with. It seems like it's something from the outside that they kind of wish they didn't have to have, or didn't they could free themselves from. But
this is a really great interview. Mikey's doing a great job. He's running over the basics. We repeat this stuff all the time in Theory Underground. I think like Mikey taught me Lacan 101. Everyone should know about it. It's the playlist at the bottom on the front page of the YouTube channel. Jay Steegs in the house says Varn is into Christopher Lasch, so he makes some allowances for psychoanalysis. Yeah, but that's like Catrone making some allowances for Freud because he likes Adorno. It's just like, can you just face up to the fact that someone that you respect was profoundly impacted by psychoanalysis and then realize that they would have given a fuck about Lacan if they had the time for culture to digest Lacan? Because like people make this oh, it's Freud, but they don't care about Lacan. And they do a lot of this shit talking without ever actually just having a conversation with someone like Mikey. And it's annoying because Lacan is profoundly important for the moment. Mikey and McGowan are, I'm sorry, like, stop talking about Lacanians, have conversations with the two that matter. Okay? I'm sorry, there's a lot of other ones who matter. But I'm just saying, like, I want people to have those conversations. Mindscape says the one I've been getting recently is Freud was misogynistic as a Freud dismissal. Yeah, but hey, maybe if he just said they, them, and she, her a little bit more often when he talked, and then he tried to say that there was no differences between men and women, then people would think he was based and fucking woke. You can't trust people who look at thinkers that way.
Unconsciously, they're hooked on it. And
I mean, they're socis. They're artists. They're cool people. They're probably cool consumers. They might be great hipsters, but like, I mean, like literally, I mean, genuinely, I have people in my life like this. And I don't expect normies in my life to take Freud or Lacan or anybody seriously. But it's when people are in the theory world, it's like, okay, I'm going to have a different kind of standard for you. It's like if I didn't want to have a conversation with a Deleuzian just because they're a Deleuzian, right? No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I mean, I would love to have a conversation with any Deleuzian who's not fucking cringe lunatic or a cowardless moron. Did I say cowardless moron? That's not the word I'm looking for. Cowardish. A coward moron, a fucking worm. I don't know. Whatever. Let's keep going.
Can I see if I got a few examples correct to throw at you, and you can tell me if these work or not?
Let's see.
Okay, so for let's go with jouissance first. Okay, so I wrote down jerking off 7 times in one day. Forms of jouissance.
Right.
The baby sucking mommy's milk until it pukes and then keeps going back for more.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to say, if anybody is actually in that boat right now, if you're jacking off 7 times a day, don't worry, you'll get through it. Don't worry, there's hope for you. So, you got to bottom out sometimes, so you can rise again.
Railing lines of coke until 4 p.m. the next day.
Sure.
Battling fake political enemies on Twitter until your synapses burn out. Or staying up late watching Simpsons or Game of Thrones or whatever the night before your exam when you've studied.
Work. Yeah, where you got to get up for an exam.
Yeah,
all of those are examples.
Rebellious bedtime, right. Baby.
Okay, and then pleasure.
Cowardly. Thank you.
So I thought of it it's like it's the state of, discharged excitation. So you're kind of you're at that homeostasis. Is it kind of the state you're in after releasing excitation? So it's like after you eat the chocolate bar that
look the example, we're talking psychoanalysis, so of course we're going to talk about sex and sexuality. Mm-hmm. Like the great instance of pleasure, the release of excitation, is orgasm. Yeah, jouissance would be the build up to it. Yeah, right. But you got to think of the pleasure principle almost like a pressure release valve. Yeah, it's if you really have to piss, it's getting to piss, right? And you go, oh, okay, and then you're back to normal social functionality, right? But as these pressures and as these intensities build up, you become less and less socially functional.
Yeah, you become an animal until you get that.
Until the pleasure principle releases it.
Yes, and then afterwards, then you and your girlfriend can cuddle or whatever and talk finally. But before that, it's all this tension and excitation.
Sure, and so and you see this in different scenarios where, like, say you had a falling out with a friend and you guys haven't spoken, and
women who don't understand this will never understand the first thing about men. First of all, second of all, some women might experience it, but they're probably like 0.2% of the population, which means that most women are completely oblivious to this dimension of masculine drive. Just saying, it's important. A lot of women are living with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or however the fuck you say that. And so, jouissance, death drive, absolutely essential for understanding that shit. Probably also essential for understanding your drive for theory. Assuming that you've latched onto that. Yeah.
Okay, now you're in a situation you're going to have to see each other. You know that you kind of have to let the intensity of the fight happen if you're going to return to a state where you're like, all right, man, we're cool. All right, all good. But it's almost like you got to have it out. You got to have that explosion of jouissance. So it can, that energy, that anger, that frustration that you have built up in you has an outlet for it to release, right? And then you can return to like, all right, I've said my piece. Now we can, it's like you have the outburst so you can say your piece, right? And I mean, I've talked to you before about this. I think one of the examples of pleasure versus jouissance is something that you have to deal with all the time as a fitness trainer, right? You have people who will come to the gym and start in on a program, and some of them are there because they really just want to have a balanced life. They want to have they want to get healthy. They, and they keep it in balance, right? Then you have they're more exceptional, I'm sure, but then you have the type of people who go to the gym and they kind of destroy themselves with it, right? And you're sitting there as a trainer, like, and their logic would be like, no, I'm going hard. I'm more disciplined. And you're the one going, no, you're not. Like, you're killing yourself with this shit. Like, this is not, if fitness is about pleasure, if it's about homeostasis, it's about having balance in your life, right? This type of person who goes to the gym, you can say, no, they're tapped into something else. They're not doing what fitness is about. They're using this to destroy themselves, and they have all these ways of trying to justify it. and all that. But ultimately, you can sit there as a trainer and go, no, they're in a weird way getting off on destroying themselves with this.
Oh, absolutely. Very recently, I have a client exactly like this who would basically not listen to any of my advice, and he just wanted me to push him as hard as possible, despite his body being entirely broken and and not really wanting to do any of the
And
work.
how do you deal with it? Like, I'm curious to know how you, like, as a trainer, how do you, if you, I mean, sure, you know, you sit there and do a psychoanalysis of them, but you're basically having to deal with this person's death drive, their jouissance. So how do you go about trying to mediate the situation?
You know, I'm not sure I've been entirely successful, to be honest. But you know, you'd reason with them a little bit, but you'd also have to kind of get them to ask themselves, what's inside them that is pushing them in this direction of like, I need to go hard, I need to feel the pain, I need to, like, what are they escaping from? What is this releasing for them? What is this doing for them? And then at the same time, me explaining that, well, actually, you're training dysfunction in your body because you're already crippled. you're already like your shoulders and hips are all cranked whacked out of proportion. You're not really able to do these exercises properly, but you want to do them anyway at insanely high intensities just so that you can feel something, and you're doing damage to yourself in the long run, and it's like, what are you here for? Like, it seems like there might be other ways for you to address whatever's eating at your soul that aren't going to hurt you through doing fitness in this extreme way.
You just did an absolutely Lacanian psychoanalytic gesture. So in seminar 11, Lacan's talking about, like, what are we trying to do as psychoanalysts? Well, we're not going to get rid of people getting enjoyment from self-destroying. Like, you're not going to get rid of death drive. What you can do is you can help them see that there's easier ways to get that enjoyment. They don't have to destroy themselves so much. They don't have to go so hard with the self-destruction. There's shorter and more convenient ways to get your little dose of jouissance throughout the day without putting yourself through that, right? And so the trick is, like, you can still have your jouissance, but you don't have to do this to yourself. And you know what I love about what you just said? That is it. That's my point, Swol. There are people who destroy themselves. They don't do it with excessive fitness programs. They do it with their jobs. That's what they're hooked on, right? And so the psychoanalytic thing that I'm trying to do is say, we have to understand that there are people whose jobs and their exploitation, it is their source of jouissance. They're hooked on it, right? I'm sure the person you were talking to, you could explain all that in a rational way. You're telling them their self-interest, and yet there's a stubborn thing. They're not going to let it go that easy. That's my whole point with class consciousness, with trying to talk to workers. There are people you can sit there and have a rational conversation with, and you can say, you know, you're underpaid and there's inflation and they're not making, but they have a stubborn hook in the job itself because it's their source of enjoyment. And this is something that I think that Marxist organizers, leftists, anybody who's trying to do anything that would be considered an emancipatory restructuration of society has to understand is how people who on paper should have no investment in this system have a fundamental libidinal investment in it. And it's not as easy as just, here's your self-interest, here's how the system goes against it, therefore, like it's a syllogism. Like, no, consumers, wage workers, they are far more invested in this thing precisely because of how it makes their life burdensome, how it fills their life with struggle, how it gives. And look, there's some workers who, if you said, hey, here's enough money to never work another day in your life, they'd be, thanks, bye, free, I'm going to go do my own thing. Of course, that type of person exists. But you know what you'd find? If you did that, if you went to a warehouse and you did that for however 100 people, you're going to find that a significant portion, even though they have enough money to never have to be in wage labor again in their life, they're going to still go get a job. And you're going to sit there and
100%.
go, you don't have to work anymore. You to talk like our friend Dave, right? You have all your time energy, right?
Hey.
You have all the time energy to pursue your
Hey, time energy mention. It matters.
Amazing.
That's dope.
And you don't have the time energy because you have to do other things.
passions, to pursue the things that we would consider life affirming, inspiring, right? You can pursue the arts, you can pursue architecture, you can pursue science, you can music, right? All of these, but no, I have friends that I've grown up with. I've done this where they said, "Oh, if I won the lottery, I'd still have to have a job," and I'm like, "Why?" and they don't mean, "Oh, cultivate a passion," right? They mean go have an actual job, and it's because
work for someone else.
Go work for a capitalist, even though you have enough money to never have to work another day in your life. And the point is, this is something that all of us, I don't care what our, what Marxists or
what Mike he just touched on is the fundamental split between the two kinds of workers that there are. There's only two kinds. They're men, they're women. No, I'm just kidding. There's only two kinds. They're white, they're black. No, I'm just kidding. There's only two kinds. There's the kind of worker that identifies with being a worker, and their life is the kind of worker that they are. And then there's the kind that says, I fucking hate my job. And it's not that they want a different job. It's that the job after job after job after job after job after job and fucking failed attempts to start their own businesses and careers has driven them to a complete wit's end. And they are so fucking angry that they're ready to fucking kill people. Like that? Okay, no, that's extreme. It's extreme. Not everybody identifies with their job in the most extreme way, and not everybody wants to blow everything up because, like, they just can't get out of this position where their entire life is reduced to labor power. But workerists just want to come around and pat the one kind of worker on the head and say, yes, we need to organize. And then they look at the kind that just hates work itself and they're just like, oh, look, it's anti-work guys. Ugh. And that conversation we had with Tut about Gore's book, he was like, he just takes the side of the workers who are the workerists, and he just doesn't like anti-work. And it's like, we try to take a path that's neither strictly anti-worker and neither workerist, but we definitely bend the bow in the direction away from the workerism. And I mean, even Catherine Liu will do that. It's just like, it's a very common thing from socialists to be like, oh yes, the nobility of the worker, the special knowledge of the worker, special little man, special little laboring man, hardworking man with the greasy glasses and the soot on his hands. Oh, the calluses. Oh yes, they do the necessary labor. They just need more respect and representation and honestly, fuck it, maybe even the ownership of the means of production. None of this like, oh, like, how about we try to change society so that the shittiest versions, the most degrading versions, the most anti-dignity kinds of versions of jobs can be phased out and redistributed until they're just chores and like mostly just not something that anybody would ever have to make their identity about. Because yeah, a person could convince themselves that they don't mind doing a shitty job, but they had to go through a lot of shit before they convinced themselves of that. All right. So that's insane. It's fucked up. And this like, oh yes, I will be the speaker on behalf of the little man, the little hard worker man who just needs to get an extra loaf of bread in the week and healthcare. God damn it, we can do it. We just need a younger Bernie, preferably black and woman, right? That's the left when it cares about the working class. Too often, way too often. Way fucking too often. We hate that shit. Anyway, I just wanted to go off on it, but I'm going to put Mikey back on. I'm listening. My eyes are on chat. I won't engage all the time. I'll let it stack up. And then I'm going to step away, but while listening, oh shit, Mikey did say something in response to Mindscape, I think, who asked Mikey how his Baudrillard book's coming. He said the Baudrillard stuff is maintaining in the background. Right now I'm finishing my first book, which is a Zizikian critique of Nick Land. That's right. He's also teaching Land in October in September. Chris Catrone is teaching in October. And then next year, Mikey's probably going to teach Land versus Zizek, and he'll also teach a Baudrillard intro course, probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, but it's looking like it. And also, if I get my way, he might teach some Leotard, who knows? Because he had to do a bunch of Leotard for the book he's writing right now, and there's the evil book, the evil Leotard book. It's very, like, if Tut's got a problem with us for liking gores, and he does, well, he's gonna have a much bigger problem for us liking Leotard, because Leotard's evil book is fucking terrible. And it's so, I mean, it's from the workerist position, it's like the most contradictory thing. It's so hypocritical. It's completely selling out that us workers at Theory Underground are on board with Gores and Leotard. It's not hypocritical. If you see a contradiction or hypocrisy where it doesn't exist, it's because you haven't tried to assume the other person's standpoint. I can usually get where someone else is coming from, even if I disagree with them. But it was Tut who hit me up after that conversation about Gores and wanted a confession out of me, because he was just like pulling his hair out over the fact that, you know, he's like, you lost that so hard. And I was like, I didn't lose it. It wasn't a debate. It wasn't about winning or losing. We just disagree, man. But he's not about having conversations. And he's proven that. And I'm going to keep bringing his name up until he apologizes to Nina, or has a conversation with her, or releases the conversation that he had with her. He said he wouldn't come back on my channel until I confessed that I'd lost that debate. And then we talked it all out. And then he said that we should do something. And then he put me off for several months. And then he jumped on the canceling Nina bandwagon over some bullshit. We'll get into that later this week. And I was just like, I can't believe this, man. And he tried to have a whole conversation with me on the back end, and I'm refusing to listen to him. You fucking unperson someone or jump on a bandwagon with people who are unpersoning a person because they have a position that like 98% of the human population has. I'm sorry. Fuck off. Just fuck that. Workerists fucking trying to say they care about the working class and then not being able to even be sympathetic to a person who has the courage to actually speak on an issue that you say behind closed doors you consider to be a social pathology. You said that, Tut. You said that the trans thing is a social pathology, but that we just need to look the other way. Come at me, bro, but do it in public. Stop trying to be a sneaky motherfucker. It takes a lot of nerve to fucking jump on the anti-Nina thing right now. She's under a lot of heat because one of the biggest pieces of shit in the world has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions actually, trying to ruin her life. And then you go with those out of context screenshots. Absolutely insane. I already wrote a piece about it. I was public about it. Even the thing about what he said behind closed doors, I said it in that Substack post. He just keeps on acting like nothing happened. He keeps hitting up people in their DMs being like, hey, Dave's mad at me, but we should still do stuff. He keeps having that conversation with all my points of contact. Man up, dude. You don't give a fuck about the working class.
You know, whatever we want to call ourselves, right? The point though is if you care about an emancipatory future, a future that in some way frees us from so many of the problems we're all dealing with under capitalism, right? We have to attune ourselves to it's not as easy as saying to somebody, your self-interests are this, here's how capitalism gets in the way, here's what you should do, and then they're just going to do it. Just like the guy you're talking about at the gym is not just going to immediately take your advice, even though you're giving him good, sound, rational advice. He's got a stubborn investment in this thing that's destroying him or fucking up his life or filling his life with drama. And this is the insight that we get from Zizek and Lacan and
the libidinal economy explanation for my shit on this is that I get jouissance and my drive gets hooked into taking a principled stand on something that I believe and not just doing HR fucking focus grouped, overproduced, uber liberal progressive activist left capitulating discourse all the time, and saying one thing in public and a completely opposite thing in private, and then acting like, oh yeah, the person who believes the thing that you believe but actually has the courage to speak on must just be so bad. You always knew that they really weren't that bad. Yeah, I get it. My jouissance is involved. My symbolic identity is risking some kind of suicide whenever I speak on this. I understand that. Understanding that you have your jouissance in something doesn't help get you out of it. You can't get out of it. If your drive is in something, it's in it. Now, I think that there is a way to tone it down, to back off, to rehumanize, in this case, to be like, look, he's a great guy overall. I think he's a good family member. I think he's a good scholar. I think that his book on Nietzsche is fantastic. I think that everybody is going after him for all of the wrong reasons, and that he's generally very principled. But when it comes to this issue, when it comes to capitulating to like where you're supposed to be on the identity politics things in the moment, it's not even about the belief. It's about like, don't fuck over someone who just happens to disagree with you. If they just disagree with you, well, look the other way, move on. But you're going to say you don't like the person, say you don't want to talk to the person, but don't try to make it into like, no, they are just a bad person. They're just a bad apple because they take a stand on something that matters, that the overwhelming mass majority of working people, over 5 billion people guaranteed care about. Over 5 billion people guaranteed care about it. And agree with her. So don't fuck off with that shit. Like, it's funny, all the class reductionists are actually gender reductionists when it comes to Nina.
Psychoanalysis is like, this is what any of us who are trying to fight for a future at all, we're up against this way that people, even some of the most exploited, are still hooked on the system. And here's the thing, I don't want to act like I'm so enlightened. I hate working, I hate wage labor, but I'm hooked on it in other ways, through pop culture entertainment, through, the video games I like, or, I like my good craft beers. Like, there's different ways all of us can be hooked on the system or invested in the system at this level of our enjoyment, right? But because Marxism puts so much emphasis on the proletariat and on class consciousness, I think particularly for Marxists, they have to focus in on how people actually get enjoyment, jouissance, from their job, and how that is a problem, and that doing the thing you were talking about with your client, where it's just not as easy as here's the self-interest, now do X, Y, and Z to help free us and liberate, right? It's just not that easy. And so then the question is, how do we approach this with people? How do we approach it? Well, we see a lot of this is one of my issues with how, whatever you want to call it, woke or liberal leftist or what, if you do the harsh, moralizing, shaming thing, it in a sense, it just makes the people hate you, because what you're doing, you might not intend that, but you're basically attacking their form of enjoyment. And then they see you as a kind of enemy, a threat, right? Even though you're saying stuff that you're trying, let's do this, it makes society better. This would make society better. You would do it. But the way they do it makes people go on their guard and say, no, you're trying to take something from me. Now, they're not going to say you're trying to take my jouissance, but that's what they register at this unconscious level. And that's why there's such immediate dislike towards it. Like, look, I work very, kind of standard blue collar working class job, right? I work in a warehouse, and I work with men, women, black, white, Mexican, gay, straight. And yet it's funny, in that world, they all, and some are Republicans, some are going to vote for Trump, some are going to vote for Harris. All of them have this fundamental dislike for the woke stuff. And I mean, that's the term they're all going to use. And it's because they feel like it's a threat to capital And they wouldn't say it like that. They wouldn't say, oh, it's a threat to the capitalist system and I get my enjoyment from it. No, but when it's change everything, tear down everything, restructure everything, and if you don't, you're a Nazi, that's not an effective rhetorical strategy to get people to try to go in a different direction when they are already unconsciously and libidinally invested in this society.
Right. It's a threat to their enjoyment.
Yeah. And that is exactly this level that they react at. And you see this online, you see this with the people you know. Like, if you ask them, why do you dislike the woke left so much? A lot of the time they have trouble telling you what it is. It's not this policy or that. Sure, they can name certain policies, but what really bothers them is it's hard for them to articulate. But this is what psychoanalysis gives us the words to make sense of something that most people can't say, right? And that's it. It seems like it's a threat to their enjoyment. And the point is, the way your average blue-collar worker feels is like they have it hard enough. Inflation and the mortgage and worrying about how you're going to, the death of the American dream, where they're sitting there going, I know my kids are not going to have it better than I did. And that was kind of the promise for a lot of for at least a few generations in America. And so when they're dealing with all these issues, and of course it's like everyone has some sort of enjoyment from the society they live in, because that's the only place you're going to get it. So they have some sort of investment in capital. And then you have a group who makes them feel like, oh, change everything and don't complain about how it affects your life or how they restructure. Like, that is the way it registers with them, is that you want to steal what little enjoyment I actually have in my life. And that is why there's such an immediate, and again, the type of Democrats and the type of Republicans I'm around, they're not the online types, right? These are, your average Republican, Democrats, and working class families. And so they're not caught up in all of the online culture war stuff as much. They just know that extremism, and to be fair, it's on both sides, because they complain about the far right too. And so the problem is, and this is where Zizek can come in. So Zizek's always talking about how what is kind of a default setting in our day and age is this weird thing where it's like, we want the thing, but deprived of the kernel of it that is problematic, right? So we want soda, but we don't want caffeine and sugar. So we have diet caffeine-free Coke, right? You go down this whole list. You want coffee, but you don't want caffeine, so you decaffeinated coffee. And psychoanalysis is always saying, like, look, what is the desire that's functioning? Well, the desire for so many working class people is they want a revolution, but without revolution. Which is, they say they know that something needs to happen profound at the structure, at the level of structure, but they don't want it to affect their lives in any way. And you can say, well, that's a hard. How do you do that, right? How do you give them that? You probably can't. But we have to meet their desire where it's at, right? The average person doesn't have, walking around America, an actual revolutionary desire to topple all of the institutions, the family, the traditional family unit, the basic way of life. They don't want to destroy all this, and yet they know something profoundly deep at the structural level needs to occur. And the point is, it's not like, oh, so some special group can figure out how to give them that. It's not that, but it's more of going, that is the desire, though. How do we talk about it? How do we engage with it? How do we meet them where they're at, so as they will even listen to what we have to say?
So, all right, there's a lot to pick up on there.
Sure.
I think I just lost one of my threads, but you said earlier that so social, part of the problem is socialist messaging or left messaging in general, and this woke moralizing being yeah, definitely part of the problem. What the hell was I gonna say? Oh man, I had so many things lined up.
Wait, let me say something, and then if it comes back to you, or you can riff off of this,
Okay.
because it goes along with what we were just saying. Look, so part of what Zizek is talking about when it comes to analyzing ideology is what Lacan calls master signifiers. Now, what is a master signifier? Well, first off, what is a signifier? Look, this is a technical term. It comes out of linguistics. It comes out of semiotics, and they're all getting this specific term from a guy named Ferdinand de Saussure, Swiss linguist, right? But what that means is he's a guy who's studying language. He's studying signs, right? And signs here has a technical meaning. It doesn't just refer to like, oh, there's a street sign, there's a stop sign. Every word is a sign, right? Like it's a broad meaning of the word sign. And so, look, in the most basic level, take the word cat. Okay, this it sounds like it's just one thing, but there's components to this. So when we say cat, the actual C-A-T, the actual word, that's what we would call the signifier, right? But when I say cat, some idea, some concept pops in your head. You know what cats are, right? But then that the cat is not just reducible to the word and the concept. Out there in the world, there are actual cats, right? So the way linguists or semioticians, the way they're going to talk about this thing is that like the signifier is the word, right? The signified is the concept, the idea of cats, and then the referent are actual cats, right? Or is actual cats. And so there's really three components to this whole thing. For Lacan, though, what's important about the signifier has to do with analysis, right? And so when we have a Freudian slip, right? You say one word, you meant to say another one, blah, blah, we all know what Freudian slips are. The point for him is that to understand what's going on in the unconscious, you really have to pay attention to the actual words being used in the slips. You have to pay attention to the signifiers, right? And because the second you make a Freudian slip, you go, oh, that's not what I meant to say. Now you're switching it to the level of the signifier, to meaning, right? And that's the ego trying to cover over the unconscious desire that just slipped out through that one signifier, right? Through that one word. Well, okay, that's, in psychoanalysis, all you basically have to work with is the speech of the patient, right? So the actual words, the actual signifiers they say, plays this fundamental role in how you interpret their desire and interpret the analysis. Okay. At the level of society, though, there's what and this is true of the individual, but the way Zizek uses it is there's master signifiers at the level of society. So much of our politics, it's battles over master signifiers. So, example of one: communism, capitalism, democracy, fascism, nationalism. These are all signifiers that are, and they're not just like other, lamps, trees, books. Like, they're signifiers. They are words. So in that sense, they're really no different than the other ones. But what they're trying to do in our world is different than what the word book or the word lamp is doing. Zizek in
Fucking Swol yawning on stream in front of his guest. You're doing a great job, man. This is awesome.
Sublime Object of Ideology, he says that what these words are essentially doing, they're trying to quilt or organize or stabilize an entire field of slippery meaning. So what does this mean? So take, for example, there's all kinds of problems in society. There's women's struggles, and there's issues with race, and there's issues with LGBTQ stuff, and then there's economic issues, and there's just a whole multitude of, there's ecological issues, right? There's all these issues, and it seems like they all kind of just have their own relative autonomy, they're their own problems, and nobody knows what to do with this multitude of issues, right? What a master signifier does is it actually it takes all of them and it pins down their meaning to give them, he calls them a series of equivalences. But here's the idea. How do all of these problems become a series of equivalences? If you take the word communism and you anchor all of these problems in that word, then feminist struggles take on there's a communist interpretation of what needs to be done for feminist struggles. There's a communist interpretation of what needs to be done with race struggles, with LGBTQ, with ecology, right? With climate change, right? So basically, the meaning of communism actually emerges retroactively once communism has come to pin down the meaning of all of these different struggles, right? And then once it's been it's the master signifier. I know, right? People on the left don't like the word master signifier because it connotes authoritarianism and all that. But you got to think the word master here, and look, there's ways Lacan does connect it to traditional authority, right? That's true. But what you got to think of master here is more of primary or exceptional. It's the one that stands out among all the other ones and has a special significance, right? And again, it has that special. So here's the thing, right? If you take this field of problems, and like we're talking about, if you pin them down with communism, you're going to get a certain interpretation of what to do about feminist issues, what to do about race issues, what to do about LGBTQ issues, what to do about ecology, right? Now, if you take capitalism and it becomes the primary signifier that's organizing and giving consistency and coherence to all these struggles, you're going to get a different interpretation of what to do about feminist issues, what to do about race issues. We'll open the market up or it's going to direct you to do different things, just like communism is going to direct you to do different things if that's how it's organized. And obviously nationalism or whatever. I don't think maybe where has fascism ever been the master? Because I don't think that's what Hitler would have used. But whether it's
Mussolini, certainly
Mussolini,
would have.
right? Yeah,
I think they
right.
would have.
And so there's and
I think what makes fascism unique, though, is that it is a master signifier that really just means trying to combine all of the master signifiers that seem to be working the most at the given moment. So it's a very opportunistic collection of the most tried and true master signifiers. It's just like the most opportunistic thing you could do, right? And so it's the bundle theory. It just bundles up a bunch of master signifiers in the same sort of way that intersectionality does as a sort of reaction against it. Taking all the opposite terms and bundling those,
Zizek runs through these different examples, right? So there's different master signifiers in different scenarios. So you would say, well, what was the master signifier in Nazi Germany? Was it Germany? Was it homeland? And Zizek says, no, it's actually Jews, right? Like the way that they viewed all of their problems, they pinned down the meaning through the word Jew, right? But the issue here is and this is the fundamental maneuver of ideology, and this is why Zizek says what happened in Nazi Germany is the greatest example of ideology at its purest. What you have here with the word Jew becoming the master signifier, which is that through which everything makes sense, right? You create a scapegoat, and this scapegoat figure. What you're basically doing is saying there's all these problems. It's kind of chaos in society, but look, now it all makes sense because I've pinned all of the issues on this one signifier. And that sounds overly abstract, but what it means in concrete terms is you've created a scapegoat. All the problems now are blamed on one specific group. And you see this type of logic over and over again when political and economic issues are, so it's immigrants or it's LGBTQ, or it's there's always some group that the ideology is going to pin all the problems on. And the ideological, why does the logic of a society do this, right? Because it pins the blame on an exterior group instead of on the intrinsic contradictions of that society. Like Marx was talking about the intrinsic contradictions of capitalism, right? that's the ideology, is that all of the issues we're facing, we're not going to actually focus on the structure of society, which is really the source and what is generating the issues, right? Instead, we're going to displace that onto some figure of the outsider, of the foreigner, and they're the problem. This is the pure ideological maneuver that Zizek says we always have to resist the temptation of, right? You cannot pin all of the structural problems of a society onto a specific group, onto a specific figure that you're basically using as a scapegoat, because they're not the source of your structural problems, right? But the issue is, and this is why there's a kind of temptation to do this, right? The temptation is, well, all of the structural issues we're facing is far too complicated for anybody to think through. It's much easier to just be able to point and go, them over there, they did it.
The left does this a lot. You know, it's, first of all, the Democrat left, so the not actual left, but the liberals are like, you know, but for Trump, everything would be fine, right? But for these populists, everything would be fine. And the left, similarly, like mostly the anarchist types, they're, you know, it's a lot of this eat the rich shit. It's like, but for these bad capitalists, but for these landlords, everything would be fine.
Like greed is the problem. Like a moral category, like greed, not greed, right?
Yes. And this kind of reminds me of, right. So you mentioned the signifier communism, and Dave talks about this a lot. How the communism, socialism, these words, these signifiers have been so tainted that we need to throw them out completely. I don't personally agree with that, because I think that words can change through time and meaning to people. They might mean one.
I think what he just said is actually a much, much, much more popular position on the left, this historical left. He says that the liberal progressives, they're not the actual left. The real left is this historical left, right? Okay, well, like, even granting that, it's like, okay. Well, a lot of people who do hold that position will say, sure, this signifier or that signifier, it is too tainted. So therefore, I go for this other one. Instead of communist, I'll say socialist. Instead of communist or socialist, I say working class. Instead of communist or socialist or working class, I just say historical dialectics. Or instead of I say anti-capitalist. Or like, people are trying to find a word. But the point is like, you had a whole bunch of words. They only got their sense from this uppercase L left thing. And now you're trying to substitute that thing with one of these other terms. Or maybe it was all quilted by the communism, but then you're like, oh, that's actually not a good signifier. So you try to swap it out for some other signifier. And it's just one of the other sort of signifiers that had been quilted, propped up, so to speak, by the primary, the master signifier before. But now that you've tried to swap it out, it's just like, well, the new one that you're using is just fulfilling the same function. Mikey said anybody who's genuinely interested in a broad-based structural emancipatory project. Well, that's a nice way of kind of stepping aside from most of those signifiers. And that's a standard, very left position when we're talking about this online historical left thing. My position's a lot different. I can just leave it at that, but I'll just say it's the difference between a signifier and a signified. I think the signified is wrong, not just the signifier. I think the whole network of signifiers is wrong. It's not just one master signifier. It's a whole network. And it's not that it's wrong. It's not just that it's tainted. It's not just that other people are brainwashed about it. It's not just that the propaganda war is something that you've lost. It's that it doesn't actually have a concrete referent anymore. And not only does it not have a concrete referent anymore, you're trying to bootstrap it into reality. You're saying, well, we just need to organize the working class that doesn't actually exist as a working class movement right now, which, took 100 years to develop before there were genuine working class movements, of course, but wouldn't have developed without the conditions being what they were. And those conditions are gone, right? Those conditions are gone. There are some similarities, but a lot of the most important conditions are gone. One of the main ones in representative democracies in the developed world, workers have representation, at least ostensible representation. It's not real. It is bullshit. That's why 50% of America doesn't vote. They understand that it's bullshit, but We're in a different situation now because working class people are allowed to go to school, are allowed to be considered like civically engaged individuals, are able to be involved. Like when Marx was writing, they were like, it's like when black people weren't allowed in ice cream parlors or to drink out of certain fountains. It's like, yeah, working class people were a class apart legally and materially and obviously. And so, of course, it had like this sort of natural consciousness, self-consciousness that could be cultivated and guided in a direction. And most of the things that people are adhering to when they are based in a different set of material conditions and saying that that's the real left, like what they're really referring to is a set of conditions that are gone. And it's like, hey, that might work so you can have this lefter than thou posture of the wise man in the activist circle. But in reality, those liberal Democrats and progressives and activists in the DSA, they're well-meaning people, and they constitute the actually existing left in the heart of the developed, U.S. imperial core. And we're supposed to believe that because there's random pockets of people doing things in other countries, reading old books, and influencers online still talking about them like they're as current as ever, that the whole thing is basically the same. We just have to swap out some signifiers. And I'm saying the signified is what matters. The signified being the concept behind what the signifier is pointing at. And you can switch out a signifier like tree with Zuki Luke, or you can swap out a master signifier like communism with socialism. But the concept itself, like what you're actually trying to get at, that itself, in order to have any kind of rigorous or scientific or systematic basis or sort of real world applicability, actually, I'm sorry, it requires that concept being developed out of the actual current material conditions. And someone like Marx would fucking get that and would read all the people who have problematized Marxism. And, Swol's on that path. He's doing that work. And I think he's aware of some of this stuff. But I just had to clarify because it felt like he said the thing that a lot of people think about my position, which is that the signifier needs to change. And I'm just saying it's the signified. But that's my position. I don't care about my position. My position doesn't matter. I just wanted to clarify it.
So tainted that we need to throw them out completely. I don't personally agree with that because I think that words can change through time and meaning to people. They might mean one thing one day, and you can change them. Like I can't see the logic in a socialist party who reads Marx, who reads Engels, who reads Lenin, and wants to achieve socialism. I don't see the purpose in hiding in calling themselves something else, because the minute someone joins the party and realizes that you guys are you're doing readings on Marx, like they're going to figure out you're socialist anyway. So like you're Marxist anyway. So what's the point in hiding?
I was a part of a group that fell into that very problem, and they decided to just go full mask off and start rocking Lenin paraphernalia at some point. And I was like, guys, you completely lost it.
Hiding that. And if you're a party that can, if you have the right message, if you understand the inherent enjoyment of the workers, and you understand what makes them tick unconsciously, like you, and your demands meet they kind of meet the moment and meet the desires of whatever the workers are kind of feeling at that time. It's not going to matter what you call yourself to be. Like, if the system is failing them and they are afraid they are losing their standard of living, and you offer them solutions, then they're not going to give a fuck.
Not if you're not trustworthy. Not if you don't have intellectual integrity or courage. You can say all of the right things and still be a coward on the most important things in the moment, and that be obvious to most people, and say, look, you want bread? I've got bread. You want healthcare? I've got healthcare. You want shorter work weeks? I've got shorter work weeks. We're making it happen. Join the movement. Bernie more or less did. You can see what happened. It's the slow capitulation or it's fast to extremely loud and completely out of touch and completely uninterested in conversation with the larger majority, which is not homogenous and is united by a lot of real needs, but is fundamentally divided on the basis of desire and drive. And so you can understand how desire and drive work, but all of those desires and drives are kind of for different things. So you really have to strip away a lot of stuff, because a lot of people would rather see their enemy lose than their side win. And that's part of what we're getting at. And I think most working class people would need to see the left and right both take an L, not some synthesis of the two. And ultimately, for anything like that to even be possible, it would take some kind of a new movement that doesn't make everybody who's a parent just roll their eyes. That only gets a certain subsection of college students excited.
They're going to try you out. And if
I have to say I'm speaking in generalities and that the exception proves the rule, then welcome.
you deliver, if you have victories, they're going to support you even more. So I don't really buy this signifier demonization thing so much. But I do agree with you on this point about how the left shoots itself in the foot with this like moralizing and wokeness, because you could take Bernie Sanders in his 2020 campaign an example, or even Tim Walz right now, who just got nominated to be picked to be the vice president. Like, if you look at this guy's record, Tim Walz, it's very progressive. He passed a whole bunch of progressive policies that if you were to when you ask people, including Republicans, ask workers, hey, would you like it if this thing were implemented? They'll say yes, right? In general, the public is very pro leftist policies, like if you want to think of it in terms of policies. But then there's also stuff with race and gender and trans policies that would, and like PMC stuff, that would kind of go against that. They would probably throw all of that out the window because you see this guy right here, he's pro trans or something, and so they might say, well, because this guy is this, he's just going for his communist agenda and he's going to moralize us all. And Bernie Sanders, but this is part of his problem. He started to speaking the language of race reductionism and wokeism in the 2020 campaign.
And resistance.
He hadn't been doing that before. He was adopting the intersectionality talking points and all that. And this, I think, helped.
No, the main thing was he stopped being anti-democratic party, right?
Keep people away from him where they would otherwise like all his policies.
Yeah. So look, okay. I think just like, because you said, right, like they some of them start going, I guess I want to tie two things. So I'm going to, it won't surprise you, I'm going to kind of defend the issue with like the demonization of the signifier, right? And I'm sure you probably expected that. So look, here's the example, right? For me, like, and it's taken me a long time for this to not just be like, oh, here's a philosophical, theoretical point I'm going to make. And for me to like really go, no, like I stand by it. So the thing that I didn't say about these master signifiers, right, is that there's this deeper level of investment in them, right? And it can be a bad investment, a bad association, or a good one, right? The point is, though, these signifiers, people pin their deepest fantasies on them, right? So, like, there's not communism, capitalism. These are not neutral terms. Like, it's hard to find anybody who just has a completely neutral disposition when you even mention these words. And so for me, right, like in the warehouse, I've done this thing many times, and I've done this with my family. I've done this with my coworkers. I do the thing that you're kind of talking about. I talk to them about arguments or points or issues, like, oh, commodities do this and blah, blah, blah. And they go, yeah, sure, I see what you're talking about, right? And a lot of the times I'm giving them basic Marxist critiques and arguments against capital. And if I do that, they're actually really receptive and open to it. They'll hear me out.
100%.
If I say communism, if I say socialism, they shut the fuck down. It's like I say they're not these, like, they can't even, they do, like, they have almost like a pathological reaction. If I make it about one of these terms, if I bring in the name Marx, if I bring in Lenin, if I bring in Stalin, it's over. And
Well, it should be over if you bring up Stalin.
okay, but for them it doesn't matter. Marx is just as bad, and there's no nuance. It doesn't matter, right? All for them, all those terms as a cluster, Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, communism, socialism, all of them are, I am going to steal every bit of your enjoyment. I am going to steal every bit of your freedom, and I'm going to do it to your children. The same thing. Like, that is, it is the most visceral type of reaction. And it doesn't matter if I'm talking to one of the guys who's going to vote for Trump or one of the guys who's going to vote for Harris. It doesn't matter. It's this thing. And so I've had to learn, because I love Marx. I mean, people go, am I a Marxist? Am I not? I mean, it's complicated, I guess, because I've got all these other thinkers that have influenced me so much. But I'll say this: I do not think anybody can even begin to get their bearings and orientation with our situation in the world without knowing Marx. He's that essential, right? And so my whole thing is, I have to always talk to them in a kind of camouflage way, where I'm not telling them where I get it from. I'm just letting them hear the arguments. And so the thing is, like, they can go for the ideas, they can go for the concepts, but you bring in and that's this Lacanian thing, where it's one thing to say, oh, there's certain signifiers that have a primary way of organizing our world, right? But it's even deeper. There's certain signifiers that organize our basic fantasies, that organize our forms of enjoyment, and to some of these signifiers are so loaded, whether in a positive way or a negative way, you cannot, some of them you cannot bring into the discussion, or you lose them, or other ones you got to bring in to have them. Like, I'll give you one. If you come to where I work and talk to all the wage workers and try to deconstruct the family, they're not ever listening to you. Like, if you attack that, if you try to we abolish the family, you've lost all of them. They'll never hear you out. You're done. Like, it's they in their minds.
And then there's other people where if you say that you actually care about children and people being able to raise children, then they'll say, oh, it's just one step away from the 14 words.
They've sentenced you to the intellectual gulag or something. Like, I'm writing that person off. And so if you bring in certain words, they write you off. If you don't bring in other ones, then they don't trust you at all. And it's crazy. It sounds like it's magic or something. You have to say the right words, but this is this kind of Lacanian Zizek'ian thing where you kind of do. And that's how it really is this powerful with these signifiers. And so my thing is, when it comes to my coworkers and everything, in the experiences I've had, like, I have to leave these terms out if I want to get anywhere with them. And so, look, for you, when you discovered Marxism, I have no problem identifying with Marx. I'll identify with Marx all day. But think about, like, at one point you didn't know Marx, and at one point I didn't know any Marx. And when you learned, it's like a whole world, a whole insight, a whole new terrain of insights was given to you. And we kind of undergo a baptism where it's like, okay, I'm never the same because of what I learned from this guy. And for whatever reason, for our particular thing, like the word Marxism didn't bother me. I never had any issues. Okay, cool. Let me read about Marx. So some people, they're never going to hear it out. Some people, they just don't care, and they've never heard why it's a big deal, and they're just open to it. And other people, they like these signifiers precisely because they trigger their parents, or they're edgy, or they're anti-American, and they view socialism, communism, etc., these signifiers as signifiers of rebellion.
Yeah.
And in a sense, like, it's not even so much about the theory or the ideas. They like the social associations they get by using these terms and identifying what they upset their parents, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I got bad news for you. Hanging out with most socialists is a dreadful experience because most of them have no personalities and they're on the autism spectrum and they're not the greatest to hang out with.
Yeah, I mean, but that's it's still, it does in America at least. These signifiers, if you want to use them in that way, or you can get this rebellious, transgressive thing by using them. And so the point is, the way people react to these primary signifiers has everything to do with
teenager
their desire
shit
and their unconscious. And everybody, we're going to be different. Some people are going to have this immediate allergic reaction to them. But I'll give you an example, right, that I find helpful. So think about it like this. Say, okay, this is a dumb project and it's not something I would do, but it's just a way of making the point. Imagine my goal was I want to go around to as many Christian churches and turn Christians into unbelievers, right? For whatever reason, that's what I want to do. So I start and I go to a church and I start talking to them, and then I become friends. I work my way in and I get accepted. And then I do real subtle, almost devilish, like cunning little things of casting doubt, right? And so I give them little thing, and slowly but surely, some of them, some of them will distance themselves from me. Some of them will actually gravitate because they will have had some sort of questions or issues with certain aspects of the Bible. And now somebody's kind of talking of it, so they can identify with somebody who's, I believe, but I'm wrestling with some of this stuff. If you word it like that, they're open to it. Slowly but surely, some of them over time, it's like you're chipping away at their faith. Okay, this is possible. Like, if somebody wanted to do this, they could do this. But you know what you're not going to do with any American Christians? You're not going to get them to go from being a born-again, washed-in-the-blood Christian into having doubts, but then sealing the deal by openly calling themselves Satanists. They're never going to call themselves Satanists. They might not believe in God. They might move away from Christianity, but they're never going to take up that signifier. And that is what it's up against. Like so many people in the American working class, I don't care what we say, I don't care what we do, they're never going to take up those signifiers. It's like trying to get somebody who's a Christian in America to become a Satanist. It's just not happening. And so because that's a reality, I'm just very, very aware of the problems with the signifiers.
Okay, yeah. So I'm glad you brought up this kind of atheist missionary example for Christians, because I think like a revolutionary Marxist, or a conventional Marxist would think about it differently in terms of how class consciousness arises and how the struggle for socialism arises. It's not so much that like Marxists and socialists are going around trying to convince people or even workers, I think, of becoming socialists or unionizing. It's like Marxism, I mean, right now, me, you, as a Marxist, you could make a strong case that we have no purpose for existing right now. Marxism doesn't make sense in the current context we are in because there is no struggle for socialism. Marxism is the critique of the struggle for socialism, and there isn't one right now. Not really, anyway. There's maybe some germs of it here and there, but we are kind of, people like me, people like Catrone or whatever, we're kind of useless right now. Like we don't have a purpose. So Marxism presupposes that there is a already worker initiated on their own struggle for socialism, politically organized, lots of union strength. Right now, like there are unions, but they're very weak relatively, and they're not connected to a struggle for socialism. They're connected, if anything, to the Democrats.
Yo, Ann is in the chat. I've got a little boyo by my feet. How's it going? Ann's at Amazon right now. Everybody, if you're in the chat, say hi to Ann. It's great to have you. Yeah, this conversation happened today. Mikey and Swol on Swol's channel. We're listening to it. It's fucking fascinating. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Democrats. And increasingly, actually, now they're getting connected to the Republicans, as we saw at the Republican convention. And you know, the leadership in all these unions are, you know, corrupt and basically opportunist as hell, bureaucratic. It's a wash. So I mean, in historically, the role of a Marxist or a socialist was more on the intellectual side. Like we enter into the already existing labor parties, workers' parties, and try to guide them to revolutionary conclusions instead of reformist conclusions, which is easily something that happens. And so like the question of today going into workplaces, I agree. If we go in.
Also, just want to throw this out there, but like that whole thing that Swol just said is something that he and Chris Catrone believe. I don't know if Catrone's been able to get Doug to come to this conclusion. I'm guessing Spencer Leonard agrees with it. I'm guessing a lot of platypus people agree with it, but it's super niche internet theory buff bro shit. It's not how most people who call themselves socialists, communists, or Marxists see things. And so they end up just trying to convince people of that. Yeah.
Into a 2024 average workplace and say, and we just go right to the end stage. And so, okay, you need to be a Marxist. Let's go. You're skipping a bunch of concrete material steps.
Yeah, but hold on. Like, to go back to my example, to be fair though, right? My whole thing is this idea of the atheist evangelist who goes in, it would be years of doing, like, this is not something that would be done overnight. And so here's the thing, even if over years, right, say this took 5 years to turn, 1/4 of the church against Christianity. You could have 5 years in with them. They know you guys are friends now. There's trust there. If at the end of the 5 years you said, okay, but all of this actually is in the service of Satan. It's in the service of Satan. You've abolished the 5 years.
Yeah.
It would be canceled. They might still have issues with Christianity and have struggles with their faith. They will write you the fuck off if what they finally go, oh, I've been groomed to be a Satanist. That's where this has been going, and that is this issue where you could talk. And look, I'm not saying there aren't. We know there's people, especially younger people, who are open to Marxist theory, and therefore they're going to be open to these signifiers. But I'm just saying, this is a thing. It's like, it's hard to get somebody who's not open to the signifiers to become open to those. That's the issue I face. It's like, it's almost like young people are kind of open to them, but even the young people who aren't, they are really not open to them. And that I'm just saying, look, something emancipatory, something on the level of a restructuration of our economy. I'm totally like, that has to happen, or I don't know, we all go into fucking Mad Max world and whatever. But the point is, capital is going to kill all of us at some point if we don't change this trajectory. And I feel like those terms, they make things harder. Like, if there were terms that were more neutral that we could use for what we're trying to do, then yeah, I just feel like we wouldn't have this specific issue. Because the problem is, even if half the working class would never ever be open to some sort of left economics, right? Because of these words, I'm like, no, what's important is getting them to move left on economics. And I don't care about the words so much. Like, and of course, You're right. Like, there is a sense where, they're going to find out we're reading Marx. Sure. But we can read Marx and still not, like, they're commies, right? Like, there's a whole thing like, no, I'm an American. Like, it's a weird way of identifying with them. It's a weird matter of trust. Sure, you can read Marx and you can learn from Marx if they trust you. But if there are certain words that just, boom, I don't trust you anymore. Just like, again, the Satanist thing. If you say, I'm a Satanist,
Mikey just sounds like he's trying to infrared pill people. He sounds like a mega communist. I know he's not one. I just want to say that, but he sounds like one.
Boom. All trust is lost. And I've just had this experience too much when I was younger, talking to people I know. And if I said, no, I'm a communist or I'm a social, it's done. And I'm like, I don't want it to be done. Like, I don't, you know.
All right, let me challenge you a little bit on that. So you mentioned in the article the last thing I would ever want to be is a good employee, because your anti-capitalist jouissance is, you know, turning a shitty job into a Zizek seminar, which is
that's when I was a bouncer.
Yeah, which is super legit. But you know what they encourage you to do in a revolutionary organization is actually, no, you actually want to be, first of all, you want to be open, to say be open about who you are. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to proselytize. You're not an evangelical. You could say like, oh, that's Mikey the communist. Weird, what a weirdo. But you go in with the attitude of being, okay, you're going to be the best worker there, and you're going to kind of gain the respect of the workers by A, working hard, and B, I don't know, just being a cool guy or whatever it is. But not only that, so they'll think you're a weirdo for being a communist for sure, and I don't doubt that. But what you do is, if you're at union meetings, you show up to the meetings, and you're going to be the one who stands up and asks uncomfortable questions to the leadership. You're going to split the room and make the people
Just
in the
reformism,
room
dude.
think, okay, actually, yeah, why isn't the leadership doing that if this makes more sense? And you show them
What
through,
unions?
through kind of pushing
What union
the leadership,
meetings?
or asking questions, like the need to push the struggle further from wherever it is. So maybe if you have a rolling strike, teachers have rolling strikes all the time. They're fucking retarded. They're the stupidest thing. It's a way to make sure nothing gets done and you don't win any wins. So you might question that openly and be like, well, if we actually want to win, historically, you know, X, Y, and Z needs to be done. And you open people's eyes this way. And if you yourself, as this weirdo communist, end up being the guy who paves the way towards victories and material wins, then then they might start to listen to you, and it won't matter. It'll matter a little bit less. They'll probably still think you're a weirdo for being a communist, but they will trust you as a person, as a coworker. But at the same time, I think what the Marxists are missing is what you're talking about, and incorporating the inherent transgression of the workplace and the ways in which the workplace jouissance and enjoyment works, and figuring out how to navigate that for the purposes of building that trust and making those wins.
Sure, right. Like, look, for me, like, I'm just a worker. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be able to organize anything. Like, that's not, like, my goal is to survive my job so I can go do what I do with philosophy, right? But I will say this: if it was somebody's mission to go in there and try, this is basically like I'm trying to say to him, like, look, everybody in the warehouse jokes. Like when we were talking about the woke stuff, they're like, you know what would be the worst thing ever is if some woke activists came in here and tried to, you know. And it's because they're sitting there going, look, throughout the day, they're all engaging in politically incorrect joking, all of them. It doesn't matter, black, white, Mexican, you know, they're doing politically incorrect joking. They have no time for oversensitivity. They're, you know, all of this kind of stuff that, you know, whether it's the woke politics or whether it's therapy culture, like all of that shit they hate. So if you were to go in there, first off, you have to meet them where they're at. Now that's a kind of religious evangelical thing. Evangelical Christians know you cannot just go up to somebody. Like street preachers do it, and they convert nobody, right?
Yeah.
If you actually want to meet people or reach people, you got to meet them where they're at. So
Communists used to be good at doing that.
they did. They used to be. But now it's like, I mean, And again, like, I understand what you're saying as far as like trying to do that, and would they gain trust over time? Yeah, but to be honest, like, hearing that, like, for me with working in the warehouse, it almost seems like a fantasy scenario. Like, at this point, like, it would be every single one of the guys that I work with have no trust in unions. So first you'd have to even sell them on unions. They have no trust in them. You try to bring that up, they're like, nope, it just makes our lives harder. Yeah, the idea is great. Workers have a bigger say, but in reality, you pay your union dues. There's union fuckery and blah, blah, blah. And so it makes unions actually, even though in principle they're supposed to make our lives better, they make them harder. So I've never seen one of them get sold. They all have a vehement distrust of unions. So first off, you have to sell them on that. Then you have to sell, and it's like,
honestly, the first time I was at a job where there's some people who were like pro-union was Amazon, and the split was so defined. There's like the hardest working guys were the most pro-union, but they were split on it. So like half of them still were like super at the level of identity, just like opposed to unions. And so, you know, like I was like, when I was at that warehouse, I was trying to go hard and I was trying to be the best in the country. And I succeeded a couple of times because these things are ranked, and, you know, so I was like part of the crew who goes hard. At the last warehouse, at the last Amazon warehouse, I was like the slacker. So I've gotten to experience both sides of that. I've gotten to experience being looked down on by the other half of the workers whose identities are really entrenched in that stuff. And I would say, like, you know, it's not the other half. It's the other half of the people whose identities are super entrenched in that, which is to say, yeah, no, there's also like this, so it's like, it's more like a quarter of the people are super like gung ho. The other half are super like fucking, I don't know, lazy. And then you've got the middle people who just do average, and, you know, they earn C's in, you know, metaphorically speaking. And it's just so depressing. It's like, am I really supposed to believe that the strategies the Swol's laying out here are still supposed to be the strategies? Like, this is still the way that, you know, he wants to antagonize against the socialism, but first the socialism would have to get going. Yes, but where does socialism come from? What were the conditions that spawned it? You think an Amazon warehouse actually getting organized is going to be the difference? Like, it's not enough, you know, obviously not. Fuck, I don't even have any chicken down here, man. I just got I got my ass handed to me this whole time. This has been the worst game of Minecraft in my entire life. Good job, everybody. You're all witnessing me getting wrecked. I just lost all those train tracks I spent so long collecting. I think it must be Death Drive that has me down here in Minecraft. It must be. There's no other reason that I'm actually down here in these mazes. But I kind of wanted to just try out the cave thing, and I don't really get it. Like, what's the point of all these fucking sprawling caves? And then, yeah, as Ray Rodriguez said in the live chat, like, he said that zombies should not be that OP. Yeah, they were overpowered as fuck, dude. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a Minecraft player. I don't understand, but I've played it enough to know that they didn't used to be like that. But I think it's like the deeper you go into the mines, the more hardcore the enemies. Now I'm lost down here. I don't got no chicken. Fuck, and I can't find where I died last. You know, it is what it is.
What I'm saying is, like, it's almost like if we're going to get anywhere, there has to be some fresh start, like some new tactic, some new identity. And when I say identity, I don't mean like identity politics. I just mean like some sort of default reconfiguration in how we go about dealing with workers has to occur, and that these old strategies, we can learn from them. But if we just try to copy and paste them, I just feel like it's Sisyphus shit. Like, just, yeah, roll it up the hill and it's going to go falling down, and then here we go again. And so I guess I just don't see the way forward with just doing copy paste of what the workers movement, when it was successful, did. And that, like, again, like Zizek has this book called The Courage of Hopelessness. there is kind of like a break where it's like you have to go, no, it's absolutely hopeless. Like we can't just redeploy old strategies now and they're just going to be effective the way they once were. It's like, no, I'm hopeless in everything. And yet it's on the basis of that I want to philosophize, like, what are strategies, what are ways, what is something new we could do to try to be effective. And I don't know, it's just, like I say, I mean, all of the basic, the unionist arguments and the class solidarity and class, like, people just like, and what you have, the term Dave likes to use is we're living in like this post-class fractured mass. And it is, when people now, we so identify with our consumer activities and our particular interest in all this shit. When people, like when Marx was, studying capitalism, in the industrial period, like those workers were so homogenous because they had no consumerism aspect. Like, and this is this core difference, right, with what we're dealing with. Consumer, did people buy shit? Yes, of course, but you know what I mean. They didn't have a consumer society the way we do now, which is a whole sprawling network of entertainment and cultivated identities and all, online personas and all this shit we do when we're not technically at work. And half the time we do this shit on our phones and we are at work. You have all these different sources of enjoyment and stimulation and jouissance and entertainment, blah, 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 that your old school traditional industrial worker didn't have. And all of those they were packed together in their living conditions. Their material reality really lended itself for them getting on the same page. Whereas us, we're so in individual, I like PS5, I like Xbox, and it sounds funny that that's why we can't get on the same page, but on some level it is, where mass media and mass culture and consumerization has so fragmented our sense of interest and enjoyment that it's virtually impossible to get everybody on the same page. And that's where I think, like, yeah, we have to think with Marx, but we also have to think this situation, like, that's being more Marxist than it's being Marxist in the way Marx was. It's thinking the material conditions of our unique situation anew. He did something, he thought his situation in a way nobody else did. Well, to be Marxist, it's not to copy and paste what he was saying was true of industrial society back then. We have to do what he was doing, the formal aspect, but we have to do it in our situation and see where it differs. And then where it differs, we have to...
Couldn't have said it better myself. Great job, Mikey.
We have to come up with different ways of engaging with those contradictions and that to me is being Marxist, is where you're like, we have a unique situation when it comes to our economy, and we have to think through the contradictions of it, the weak spots, its strengths also, and then we have to figure out, like, if we want to restructure this, if we want a society that's in some way freed from capital, freed from the commodity form, freed from wage labor, then what is it in our situation that we can use to fight for an emancipatory future?
So then what's could you give us maybe a theoretical example, maybe a practical example of like how Marxists could apply understanding of jouissance, death drive, because I think you say up till now Marxists have been focusing on kind of pleasure and rationality side of it and the good. So how can we? I mean, Trump is a great example. I think we could both agree of someone using the other side, using jouissance, using death drive.
The Republicans typically, in modern times, Republicans are better at manipulating libidinal economy.
Yeah, and they're making the big other. But so how does the left take advantage of libidinal economy without necessarily creating a big other enemy, a scapegoat? It's the landlords, it's the capitalists that are the baddies, it's the PMC that are baddies. Like, how do we use this, let's say, both on a national stage or on like a kind of a broader international socialist movement, and on, let's say, even just in the workplace? Like, how do you use this stuff to get that that union that you're talking about. You guys don't have.
Right. Okay. So there's two things. So on the one hand, to respond to your question here, I'm going to use the Lacanian concept of fantasy, but I'm also going to use our friend Dave's concept of time energy. And I should just say, right, like,
I look forward to hearing what he's going to say, but I would just reject the premise of the importance of this priority in the first place and just say why. Why is the union your goal? Most of us workers at Theory Underground have never even worked somewhere where there is a union in the first place. Most jobs don't have them. So you want to create them? That's a lot of time and energy and effort for people who don't have any time, energy, or effort to give. For what? To make your whole life into being a union organizer? So we just keep trying the same old thing for the last several hundred years? Like, I don't know what to tell the union organizer. Keep doing the Lord's work, but, you know, whatever. I don't care. I mean, like, unless I'm there, it's like localist shit. It's like, cool. I mean, I guess like a sustainable garden is also very cool. I mean, cool. Like, how about a hiking club? There's all kinds of civic activities you can do. Maybe after putting all that time, energy, and an effort that you don't have into something, you'll be able to get something off the ground, and maybe it'll last, and maybe it won't get co-opted like within a few years. But in the meantime, you get old, and then you die, and you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything real. Maybe some people got a raise, and then that goes away 5 years later. What's the point of that? Why not just worry about being a good parent and focus your efforts on trying to figure out like some new possibility. There was a time when unions weren't a thing. There was a time when all of these other things that mattered 150 years ago weren't a thing. There's all kinds of new possibilities. There's new possibilities, guys. But okay, that's what my response would be. This is the unofficial sequel to the conversation I had with Swol. I'd like to have a real proper one, maybe even this coming Wednesday. Swol, let me know if you're down.
Dave he came up with this idea of time energy. Like, for a long time, I knew that capitalism is a system that deprives us of our time, right? So I was always tapped into this temporal thing. But when Dave went to work on, and I guess I should say for anybody to know that we're talking about Dave McCarricker, his book is called Time Energy, right? And he's both a friend of ours.
Yeah, he has Lenin derangement syndrome.
I'm sure he have plenty to say to you.
Serious case.
But okay, look.
Yeah, someone in the chat was like, "Oh, Swole did a video about Trotskyism. I can't take anyone seriously who doesn't like Stalin and Mao." Yeah. All right, you know. Cool. I bet your bedroom has flags and pictures of them up, and you light little candles to them, and you hang out in 10 Discord servers where you all talk about that. And you all read these books, and then you just if you could just convince enough people to read history the right way, you'd have a solution, right? I found that the best 10 years, the best 10 years of my life are ahead of me. The best several years of my life have been the last few, but I wasted a substantial amount of my life, not quite 10 years, but a substantial amount of my life trying to take people who think Stalin, Trotsky, Lenin, or Mao are the solution or the correct tendency more seriously than most other kinds of tendencies. And honestly, at this point, like, I've got about as much to learn from any sect of Christian or network marketer, I don't know, as I do from them. I don't know. Show me that I'm wrong. I look forward to the conversation with Gabriel Rockhill. Maybe he'll teach me otherwise. And look, I love Catrone, but like also he's the last Marxist for a reason. If Gabriel Rockhill can convince me otherwise, that'd be great. I look forward to interviewing him. It's not going to be combative. I just genuinely want to hear him out since I allowed Catrone to dunk on him on my platform. Even egged him on. I did that. I admit I did. I'm willing to be wrong on this, but God damn it, I feel like I've just wasted a lot of time trying to capitulate to people who are teenagers or they're teenage-minded 30-year-olds. I just can't.
What Dave's fundamental contribution so far in his work as a theorist is this idea of time energy. And it boils down to, when you really think about what it is to have your time you don't really have your time unless you have your energy. You really don't have your energy if you don't have your time. And the point is, this is how I would go about, and with my coworkers, when I talk to them like this resonates. This does something. This gets them all on the same page. This is the one thing I found that really kind of works. So you say, look, Americans are completely invested in the master signifier of freedom. Okay. So if you sit there and chip away at that, they're really not going to trust you, because it's like, how are you not going to support freedom? And yeah, we know that. Oh, well,
Swol is like in the chat, having a conversation in the live chat. And I guess there was people in the chat being very talkative, and I have no idea what they were talking about. I have a sense that some of it was fucking awesome. Most people were following along. Most people were getting a lot out of this. Some people were like, not so much. And so I have no idea what's going on in that chat. I'd love to find out, but I'm not going to watch it. So if you know all about what happened in that chat, I'll read what you say on stream. If you want to share it, I'm super down for that. But I'll keep it playing.
Well, freedom is actually, it's a abstract freedom. It's your freedom to basically choose who's going to exploit you. It's the liberal bullshit concept of freedom. Yeah, we know that. But your average normie isn't working with this theory. They just know freedom equals good. And if you don't like freedom, you're not to be trusted, right? So the way I talk to them about it is I say, look, guys, I understand that there's always going to be some necessary labor. I love the idea of automation in however we could use it, to free us up from bullshit jobs and, to automate the production process as much as we can. But the point is, we do this so it frees up our time energy. I believe in freedom, but I don't think we have access to freedom without time energy, which is to say, and I'll use Dave's famous little definition here. Time energy is large, repeatable blocks of energy-infused time or time-infused energy throughout the week, right?
With reference to others, so that you can, you can.
And that's the thing. He adds,
nice
it's
catch,
almost
Swol.
putting Legos together. He adds qualification because he's trying to pin it down as with as much theoretical nuance as possible. But the point is, look, to have your time energy.
Well, and the way that I say it now that Swol's getting at, I found a better way of saying it. It's just large energy infused repeatable blocks of time reliably between us. Right? If they're not reliably between us, we can't do anything. The point is that this is not a kind of time or energy that is interior fully, that it's largely structural. It's a common resource. There's necessary labor that is also a common need to attend after. And so most people are attending after those necessary forms of labor, while only a handful of people have surplus time, but even they don't really have energy for anything, much less time for their own children. And so everybody doesn't have time energy. Most people who are workers have it worse. But yeah, it's large energy infused blocks of energy infused, or another way of saying energy infused is rested, cool, calm, collected, or rested energy infused blocks of time reliably between us.
It's when, one, you have enough time to actually spend on an activity you find life affirming, that you have a passionate connection towards it, something you really want to do, right? Well, the work week doesn't really give you much time to do it. You can have little hobbies, but you're not allowed to have passions, because if you're going to learn to play the violin, if you're going to learn a new language, if you're going to learn philosophy, right? If you're going to undertake any of these incredibly difficult pursuits, you have to have enough time throughout the week to really invest in them. And you have to have the right amount of energy to pull them off, right? If you've been doing, if you're a nurse and you've been caring for people for 10 hours a day, you're zapped when it comes to your mental energy, right? Trying to go home and study, Kierkegaard after that, you only have so much energy throughout the day to be productive with. And so the point is, freedom for us is having more and more time energy to do with what you would, right? Like to do the things that you're passionate about. And so here's what I'm fantasy, freedom, time, energy. If you talk to your average normie workers in terms of time, energy as more freedom, I want to say it like it triggers, but in a good way, right? It activates their fantasy space, right?
Yeah, but Mike, this is the same. This is the whole argument for Marxism. Marxism is freedom. The point of Marxism is time energy, right? You can sell it the same way, really.
Not if you're calling it socialism and communism. That's where it shuts down. They're not going to go for it because those words are like, if you were to ask them, like, what do those words really mean? It means state oppression. Like, that's just how they, like.
Right, you can just throw that around though and be like, isn't that what we have right now? Right?
Yeah, they wouldn't say not. They wouldn't view it as your average worker isn't going to go. No, they think socialism, communism. It's gulags. It's show trials. Those are the fundamental deep connections they make to these terms, which is, and that's it. Basically, though, this is where the signifiers matter. And I'm saying, if you use a signifier like time energy and you use it in terms of fantasy, and then you say, like, look, you in terms of passion and living a life that you find passionate, right? These signifiers activate something in your average American at the phantasmatic level. This captures, it stimulates their desire. I want that, right? And this is the funny thing. Like, I hate calling it magic, but like there's a way words do things, right? And J.L. Austin understood the performative theory of language, right? And so, yeah, you can use words to describe things. I can say, there's a lamp sitting on my table. Sure, it describes a state of affairs. But the performative thing is when you say, like, I now pronounce you man and wife. When somebody says those, who's in an official position to say that, you actually change a person's life because now they are officially married, right? Words actually have this ability to have these material effects. That's why I would even argue that signifiers are part of the material base, right? That's how powerful their effectivity is on a material level. That's the issue, is that, you say time energy and you explain that to them and you say, what we need to do is work towards a society with less work so we can spend more time with our loved ones, develop stronger family bonds. And I know you're smiling because you're sitting there, you want to go, that's what socialism would do. But this is the materiality of the signifier.
We just trick them and use the language of time energy up until the revolution's done and go, ha, we actually did socialism, suckers.
Fair, right?
We fooled you.
To be fair, though, there's certain Marxists, there's certain socialists who fetishize work. Like, this is another issue we have. Like, you could say, like, I make no bones, I'm anti-work, and I'm not just anti-wage labor, I'm anti-necessary labor. Like, if we want to talk about some sort of like grand march in the human history towards freedom, it's funny in the Bible. Do you know not wage labor, but work, necessary labor, was God's punishment to Adam and Eve for sin. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, well, if we want to use that as like a kind of mythological reference, we can say, like, no, the whole history of human struggle, the entire political, economic history as mankind is trying to overthrow God's command or punishment. Like, no, like, it's to free ourselves from necessary labor. And anybody who like does the workerist thing where it's like, no, work is good and work, like, that's where you lose me. Where it's like I'm just saying, sure, we can find socialists and communists who are like, no, it's about getting rid of necessary labor.
Okay, but how does the language of time, energy, and freedom, how does that work with? How does that incorporate jouissance and libidinal economy in a way that doing the same thing but using the communist signifier?
Okay, so here's the thing, right? So at the level of fundamental fantasy, right, which is this key thing for us, because what fantasy does, it's not just your typical, everyday usage of fantasy. Fantasy, in the Lacanian sense, is basically a fundamental scenario or sketch, an image, mise en scene, as we call it, right? Where basically you're staging what it would take for you to have full enjoyment. Now, of course, the problem with this is nobody has this perfect be all end all enjoyment. It's a fantasy. But the trick of the fantasy is, if I could make that happen, I would have
I would be
have all
complete.
the enjoyment. I would be complete.
Yes.
Well, you're never going to be complete. Your enjoyment's only going to be partial. You're only going to have partial enjoyment, right? You're never going to have whole, complete enjoyment. But this fantasy of we call it ontological wholeness, but of completeness in your being, right? I mean, this operates in all Hollywood fantasies. Jerry Maguire, you complete me, right? The famous line from that. And what the love story ultimately is, it's like you go about life and there's something missing in your life, and finally I found that one person who's going to complete me. And the funny thing about these stories, they always end on the climactic realization of the love. Oh, you're mine, I love you, and they seal it with a kiss or so. They don't show you the day after, and or at least they don't show you the year after or the 10 years after, where it's not as phantasmatic once the relationship has become a material, regular reality, right? They leave that out because a real loving relationship is not a perfect fantasy, right? It's what you do after, the charm of the fantasy wears off, in a sense. So the point is, though, but fantasy is this space that is incredible. It's of fundamental importance for us Lacanians and Žižekians because it's the space that tells us what we have to be in order to satisfy the other and to make the other happy and therefore satisfy ourselves. It's this sense of ontological completeness infusing with the other person, the soulmate or whatever, the harmonious society, right? And visions of this is what the accusation of utopianism basically is it's a picture of a society without any contradictions, any conflicts, where all has been resolved and now there's pure harmonious happiness forever. And that is a fantasy. It's just that's not ever going to be the situation. But because we can't stand the idea of lacking forever, being incomplete forever, we concoct these fantasies. And the point is, though, fantasy tells us what to desire. Like, to have desire in general, desire doesn't know what to desire. It can desire anything, right? Desire needs something to desire. It needs to be informed. And this is what Hollywood does. Zizek says that's the function of Hollywood now, is to teach us what to desire.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, when we're talking about trying to, and on some level, it's the art of seduction, and I mean seduction more in this Baudrillardian sense. But how do you get people to desire some kind of emancipatory future? Well, you have to paint a vision, you have to paint an idea that meets them where they're at, but at the same time gets their desire up and running for something they don't have. And so this image of, hey, you work all the time, you're always stressed about money, you never have enough money, you know that your kids aren't going to have a life that's better than yours, and that they're going to face greater struggles. You don't have time, energy, you're exhausted, you're burnt out. What about a scenario where we have restructured society so we have more time, energy to spend with our families, we have more time, energy to develop our passions, we have greater access to the resources that it would take to live lives of passion and creativity? Now you start speaking their language. And then you start saying, at that point, you know what they're willing to hear? Yeah, the existing order, the world I live in, is the issue. It's the structure of this economy. And because I say to them, socialism isn't what is keeping you from having your time, energy. And in a sense, fascism isn't. All of these different isms that we talk about, no, it's capitalism that is really keeping you from having this. And so the point is,
but socialism and fascism were both workerist. They were both work reductionist. By necessity, I'm not saying they could have been otherwise. They were responding to their own conditions, but yeah, they were super like, oh, workers find fulfillment by supporting the right reformist or revolutionary movement that is either socialist or fascist. And it's just like, okay, cool. And they're capitalists. Like they're both capitalists in their essence. They're just about centrally controlling and mediating the contradictions of capitalism, which can be done to a certain extent. You just keep differing and deferring. The inevitable day of reckoning, which, who knows, maybe that'll work out. We'll go to space. And by we, I mean 1% of humanity will go to space. Maybe 5% if they're lucky. Like, yeah.
Those signifiers and that scenario registers with your average American normie at this unconscious level. And that's where you have to start.
Actually, I'm gonna look at chat for a minute. I'm gonna put it up on the screen. If I full size that, is it gonna fuck up everything? Oh, let's see. Can people see all that? More or less. Here. I need something else. Hold on. Let's do it like this. Do it like this. Just gonna go ahead and widen this up. Let's engage with chat a little bit. What's up, chat? How you doing? How you doing, chat? How you doing? Can I make this larger so you can all see this better? Good enough. Spencer's in the chat saying all kinds of stuff. What you say? Oh, I'm gonna end this poll for now. So there we go. 64% said that they did click the like button for this video. 27% said nope. 8% hope that I fail. 37 votes overall. Dude, I received a comment recently that said, for my position with the Nina thing, they hope that I fail. And they said that Theory Underground's already failing and they look forward to seeing me go back to Amazon. So that's pretty funny. Anyway. I mean, I would love to go back to Amazon in a sort of sense. In a sort of sense. But it's always a temporary holdover because it's part of the gig economy. It's not a real job, guys. It's lumpen shit. Anyway. So some said dope stream. Thanks, man. Thank you. Coalesce Mindscape said this is where Mikey may be more Baudrillard influenced also. It's not just materialism and rationality. Images and fantasy can be more influential. I think that's probably a really good point. Yeah, I think it has something to do with his Baudrillard, but also obviously his Lacan. But, you know, in one sense, like Baudrillard's sort of like Marx plus Lacan and McLuhan in a new age, right? Spencer says, I was bored tonight because my girlfriend is visiting family and got your email. And I was like, okay, I'll go see Trap. Oh, shit. You what? Dude, awesome choice. I'm telling everyone, go watch Trap. Don't get any spoilers. Don't find out anything about it. Just go watch it. Don't let anyone talk to you about it until next week. We'll all start spouting spoilers next week. If you don't care about spoilers, you'll hear them next week. Anyway, Benzer says, I loved when Maniac actually did that. Jonathan Simard says utopia is not a goal. It's just a direction. Spencer says my blog is continuing. My job got bought by a bigger company and I'm worried changes are going to happen that will require me doing more work. And also my school semester is ending. So I've had more work. So I'm not able to focus as much on taking TU classes or doing independent study things. Yeah, man, we've missed you. And so I had a moment of flashback to when the Zero Books thing went down and also a moment of appreciation for wanting a middle road between workerism and anti-work infantilism. Like, it sucks having a job that is not a real job in some ways. It's mind-numbing and you just get like catatonic. Dude, 100%, 100,000%. I'm going to be having a conversation with Matthew Stanley of Samsara Dialectics on Wednesday. Gonna do epic marathon streams, so mark your calendars for Wednesday. It's gonna be awesome. Gonna have Catrone, gonna have Christine Louis de Sully, gonna have Studebaker, gonna have Matthew Stanley, gonna have Nance, gonna have Mikey, hopefully gonna have Anne, gonna have Todd. Classic lineup at Theory Underground. All right, so anyway, he said, but of fucking course, it's better than having a job that sucks and it's hard work. Yeah, the reason I brought up Matthew Stanley is because he's also doing one of these fake email jobs that pays real good, but it's soul sucky as fuck. Yeah. And I said, it's renegade PMC shit, man. In his case, it is, because it's actually a pretty good income. I don't know if it actually is for you. I mean, it might be. Is it salaried? I don't know. To be properly PMC, it would have to be credentialed and salaried, really, wouldn't it? Anyway, he says, but a fucking course is. People do talk about the PMC, and then they talk about email jobs, and they think they're talking about the same thing. And there's a big crossover. And there's actually something in terms of critical media theory and material analysis and trying to understand desire and drive that's very worthwhile, like talking about email jobs and sort of doing that bracketing procedure where you just focus on people who work email jobs because they live in a world of abstraction. They don't go out and do regular things. I mean, they might as a consumer, but not as a worker. And so, a big division on COVID responses came down to people who work email jobs versus people who they're going to be out there working no matter what. Essential labor and all that. Anyway. So yeah, Spencer, man, my heart goes out to you. Super busy and all that. Glad you're getting paid better though. That's good. Jonathan Simard says the people has to imagine its own alternate system to issue its own money and distribute it to heal capitalism mistakes and pay more important jobs for society. Benzer says in response, I don't think our own money with blackjack and hookers is going to change much. I don't see crypto creating any change, and it's basically that concept. Dude, yeah, Benzer. I mean, you're getting at kind of something I was thinking, but I won't go into my whole shtick on all that. It's not the time. It's not the place. Jonathan said crypto is just a bite in the hole. WJP's been here for the whole stream. Still here. Good to see you. Said building my grandfather's urns right now. Enjoying the video. Urns plural. Some said, what was your position on Nina? My position on Nina is that the screenshots of the chat where she was joking about being a Nazi was very obviously joking. If you've ever been under fire being called something that you're not, if you ever just have spent years being stalked and harassed and having people not talk to you, or if like Daniel Tutt, actually inviting you on, doing a whole interview and then deciding not to publish it, like that kind of thing. Like when that stacks up, like, yeah, you start to have conversations with your friends and you start to joke. Oh, I guess I really am becoming a Nazi. Oh, whatever, it's just like, if you don't know that kind of joking, I'm sorry. And then the whole thing on gender, it's like, her position is the majoritarian position. It's not quite my position. But it's not good to make an example of someone like J.K. Rowling or Nina Power, and then tell people that you want to run the economy. Trust me, comrade, with your economy. I'll tell you where to work, when to work, how long to work. Don't worry, I represent your interests. Trust me, I've got your interests right at heart. And also, give me your children. Like, sorry, what? That's a great idea. Not. So yeah, no, I think if you can't kick it with Nina, if you can't have a conversation with Nina, if you can't say, I disavow any of these fucking pieces of shit who are like making a career out of taking her down when she's just a woman philosopher thinking, if you really think that she's got blood on her hands well, then I just don't take you seriously. That's all it boils down to. Most people don't take you seriously. You'll be in good company with anybody who's a big fan of ContraPoints and Philosophy Tube and Noah Samson and Thought Slime and Vosh and Hassan, maybe even Destiny. You'll be in good company with them. You'll be in good company with Sam Cedar Bros. But that's consumer demographic shit. That's your weird niche internet consumer habit shit. It's copology. It's 35-year-olds hanging out with teenagers, not reading books, listening to people pretending they read books. I don't know. That's what I think about that. So no, I don't think that's the people to capitulate to or constantly sort of serve as your big other. No, I mean, they're good people. They mean well, but I'm sorry. You can't bring them home. You can't expect the overwhelming majority of people to trust them. You couldn't trust most people at a McDonald's to trust them. You couldn't trust most people at a factory to trust them. You couldn't expect most people at Amazon to trust them. You couldn't expect, and the scripts that they're feeding you, these old, tired, worn out, recycled scripts, they ain't going to cut it. So, that's, you asked me for my position. I give it. That's what it is. So let's see. Weird Solowski says, in the distinction of otium and scole, where do the unemployed on welfare land? That is not large energy-infused, repeatable blocks of cool, calm, and collected time that is reliably between us. It's surplus time had in isolation. It's not cool, calm, and collected. It's agitated. It's stressed. It's marginalized. It's not, and it's marginalized in the sense of like everybody wants you to get a job or doesn't really respect you. Or if you can find some people who want to do stuff, like chances are, it's not going to be the kind of stuff that people with large energy infused or large blocks of cool, calm, and collected energy infused, repeatable blocks of time reliably between them are able to do. It's not going to be liberal arts stuff. It's not going to be any kind of meaningful organizing stuff. It's going to be jacking off and watching porn or when you go off with others going and doing, I don't know, like drinking or whatever. The point is like you're part of you're not able to serve your function. You've been trained up in a schooling system that taught you how to be nothing but labor power on call, maximizing your value. And if you're not able to do that, you're going to be depressed and depressing to people who have to see you. So no, the unemployed don't have scole. They don't have OTM. If Mikey was unemployed and he had enough money so that he didn't have to work, well, then he'd be happier than a fucking happy person. I don't know what to tell you, but most people, it's not going to be the case. And that's kind of what Mikey was talking about earlier. Let's see. Ben Zur said, I think the capacities of the person to act matter more than if their freedom is from the safety of capital or welfare, as long as they feel secure in their capacities to care for their well-being. WJP says, I'm an artist with a significant ratio of time energy compared to the average American, and I'm not sure if I'm utilizing it correctly. What does the correct or optimal way or better than the alternative way to use time energy amount to? Like, okay, that's a really good question. The short answer, do you want the short answer or do you want the long answer? I don't want to do a long answer. I just realized I'm looking off screen. That's awkward. I can look at this on screen. How about that? Like this. Now my eyes are pointing in the correct direction. I've got two screens here. I was looking at the wrong. So, I mean, you might have like some kind of relative approximation of something like time energy, but it's probably still pretty isolated and it probably still doesn't really work with most people. But there's all kinds of ways to kind of simulate having time energy. There's all kinds of ways to modify your weekly routines to get a little bit more out of it. But also if your libidinal economy is the libidinal economy of a person who's been schooled to be nothing but labor power, I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be a pain in the ass. Self-help will work up to a certain extent and then you'll burn out. And so you got to experiment. We're all experimenting, right? I have all kinds of advice to give on it, but now is not really the right time. And I've said it elsewhere on this channel, but no, I think it's one of the most important questions. So it's one of the most important practical questions. I said I was going to play that Burt commercial. It's that old Burt commercial with the old logo that I almost got sued for having. I'm going to roll that and then be right back. I'm like, I want something to eat. I need to grab a quick drink and then we'll finish this thing out. Okay, is it going to play? Is it like Frozen? It's like Frozen.
Could call that an answer to an unspoken prayer, It really was.
Starting it over.
Couldn't believe it when I saw that poster. Baudrillard in Boise, fucking Idaho. Are you kidding me? It was virtually an answer to an unspoken prayer, It really was. And I just couldn't believe that somebody was interested in the things that I was interested in, that I had been interested in for years and had kind of given up on in futility. I'd labored in solitude for so long. I had no one to talk to about it, no one to bounce ideas off of. It just vastly accelerated my ability to, I don't get too philosophical, to interrogate, to inquire, and to see connections between things.
And so the theory underground that Dave is developing in this mission is trying to reach an audience of people who aren't just doing philosophy in a university setting. Why is there an advantage to doing philosophy outside of an academic setting?
Well, the neat thing is that you can really drill down. When you're in school, you have to do 50 things, and you do them all partially. And it's like you're digging a well, and you're digging very shallow wells. When you can drill down deep and take your time and really get into something, especially with a company of fellows, that you get into the slipstream of a great philosopher, and you just have to take the deep dive. But initially, a lot of these philosophers, they're speaking to a tradition, they're trying to resolve specific problems, and they just assume you know what those are, that you've had their life experience. So the first time you read them, you're just trying to get the lay of the land, and you may well have some insights. You may wrongly associate certain things with what they're saying, but then you'll maybe look at a secondary text, and now, since you have something to bring to the table, all the lights start going off. And then when you read the philosopher the second time, you can read them more knowledgeably. And so you're looking for things, you're better able to follow along, you're not left behind so much. The third reading, though, and these are for profound books. You don't have to read everything like this. But for a profound text, the third reading is where you've learned enough that you relate it to everything else that you begin to see the connectedness between what this philosopher is doing and the implicit, unstated situation that they were speaking to initially. Something about that. And you see the connection between that and all sorts of other things. And you connect it to your life and the way you live and move through the world and the way you see things and interact with people. And you are not just absorbing, you're creating. You're a co-creator. When it's all said and done, you just have to put it into your own words. And there's a danger of reductionism there. But when you put it into your own words and you're bringing all these different strands together, it's really phenomenal. And that's what the third reading does.
So, a few years ago, Dave, running the Theory Clip channel, had a Patreon going and discontinued accepting money from people. But since then, you have continued to make a donation monthly. And it's obviously very meaningful to Dave, meaningful to me as well, being Dave's partner. And so, why do you do that? essentially.
Well, Dave brings people together. Whatever Dave is doing is valuable. And my life was completely changed. And I'm grateful. I can't afford to give Dave $50 a month, but I do because it brings me joy. Every time I get my Social Security, the first thing I do is send $50 to Dave. And my heart sings. And it's a sense of gratitude. I don't feel obligated to do it. I want to do it. And I want to do whatever I can to help Dave do for other people what he did for me. And I want that to continue. And it's truly, I take great joy in it. It's the best $50 I spend a month. Really is. If you can plant a seed where a handful of people meet each other and they can all have the experience that we've had face to face with each other, that would be awesome.
Whoa, 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 whoa. It's already over. It's already over. I'm back. I'm back. What's up? What's up? Why'd I get in trouble for this ad? That's a really good question. I got in trouble for that ad. Well, not that ad. London Transport Authority sent me a lot of warning emails about the logo being a knockoff of their logo. Even though the dimensions are different, colors are different, the words are different, the country is different. Would I have won a lawsuit? I don't fucking know. If I could have defended myself legally, I just would have gone bankrupt, though. I don't care. I don't care. So many people were acting like Nina going bankrupt was a big L. It's funny. Someone had to spend $1 million to bankrupt her. That person who spent that $1 million will never get that money back. Now that person's spending $40,000 just to like pay forensic attorneys to go and double check and make sure that her few remaining possessions like books aren't of enough value to be taken away. Yeah, it's crazy. So, yeah, I mean, they kept sending me warning emails and I was just like, look, guys, I don't believe you are who you're saying you are. You haven't shown me any proof that you really are the London Transport Authority. They sent me a bunch of things that I would have had to download in order to look at. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to download anything from you guys. You haven't proven who you are. And then they stopped responding, but I also just didn't want to have to think about it. And I was also like kind of over the logo. And I was like, well, fuck it. And so I just made one in literally like 5 minutes. The new logo was just like, it took 5 minutes to come up with. And the rest is history. I'll have a different logo eventually. You know, there's one that I kind of have in mind. There's a couple different versions of it. But when it comes to aesthetics, that's not the priority here. And maybe it will be someday, but it ain't right now. So I've got some food I'm about to eat. We're going to keep listening. I'm really excited to be here. I really appreciate you all. There's a lot of people here. I didn't realize. I thought it was like 10 of you. I never looked at the number this whole time. It's like 20 plus, 26, 26, 28. I don't know. It's fluctuating, but it fluctuates because people drop in, they go away. They drop in, they go, oh, this sucks. They go away. They drop in, they go, I'll come back to this. They add it to their watch later. They drop in and someone else just falls asleep and it's just heading out. It's a rotating door, this audience. It's one of the weirdest things in the world. But anyway. What movie? Oh, it's called Trap. That's all I'll tell you about it. Don't look up any information. Just go see it as soon as possible. WJP, what? You're saying long answer, short answer. What are you asking about? I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Oh, I see the question up above. I kind of answered it. I gave you the short answer. Couple more examples of like, now's not the time. I want to close this out. So I do want to finish this interview. That's kind of the main thing. Weird Selesky says, I'd love a map of what? How far did we get through the Mikey interview? I'm thinking of calling it a night, says Mindscape. Yeah, same. I'm feeling like that too. It's like midnight 30 where I'm at. We've got this much more. Let's keep going.
Meeting people where they're at.
So that might be true, but
like 10 or 15 minutes. I'll skip back a little bit and keep going.
At this unconscious level, and that's where you have to start meeting people where they're at.
So that might be true, but at the same time, it's you're still kind of going in a utopian direction and saying, well, what if we had this better society where things were X, Y, and Z, and you had time energy, and then that might get their gears turning, but it's Marx's point is that it's through the workers' inherent struggle with the capitalists, with the bosses, that they begin to see the need to take over the factories, to do it, that they can do it themselves, that they need to do it themselves, because that the capitalists can't offer solutions to the crises of capitalism and these contradictions, and then the theft of their wages. So it's less so that like we got to convince anybody of anything. It's more like the conditions of capitalism itself shows the way forward through capitalism, through the workplace, and less so. Like, I mean, that's what he critiqued the Owenites and the Fouriers for, was that just like thinking up like, well, we could just draw up a social plan and be like, wouldn't it be great to do this? It's like, okay, sure, it would, but there is no material path forward through that. And Marx's point is that the workplace and capital's contradictions show that path forward, through workers seeing, there's more of them than there are of the capitalists, and that they could just run shit themselves.
But the thing is, just because we have jobs, those workers aren't workers nowadays. That class isn't what we have as a class, if we even want to call it that. And so that's where it's like, yeah, Marx said that, but this is where I go, yeah, but this is the copy paste thing. I don't think that works. Like, I think actually appealing to people at this fantasy level that gets them desiring something outside the frame of capitalist realism, there's more material potential in that than trying to tell. They don't want to work more at like, oh, we work, we do this shit and we go home, but now we have to work at building a revolutionary subject or class that could, like, they view it as more and more extra labor, and it's like they feel like, no, let me just do my dumb job and go home.
I mean, fair, but there is no socialist society without the workers taking over that society.
And that's the thing. Is that really the way to the emancipatory future? I don't know. I mean, if maybe, but I just have my doubts, and that's where look, Zizek basically sums it up, right? And I think this is where you and I, look, there's a lot of overlap between us, but I think maybe we would take different takes, and we'll just see. Look, we know Marx's famous quote, like, philosophy has hitherto only interpreted the world, the point is to change it. Okay, well, Zizek reverses it, and he says, look, throughout the 20th century, philosophers tried too much to change the world. Now is the time to rethink it. And so for me, what I take from that is, like, I just don't think that the old strategies, the old, like, I don't think the worker now is the worker Marx was talking about. I don't think the job that, yes, I know that we're still in wage labor. I get that. But the structure of the job, the way that the job is situated in society, the way that workers are atomized out in the suburbs for the most part, as opposed to living in, like, all of these different material aspects change the status of the wage, change the status of the worker, change the status of the worker relationships, right? And that to be true to Marx is to go, okay, like that probably isn't just gonna work now. It's not going to appeal to them. How do you? Because at the end of the day, even back then, like if it's just waiting on the right situation for capitalism itself to provide, then we're just all at the whim of capital itself. But the question is, what? Okay, so there's just some sort of like quietism that if I accept, because there's a way of like, oh well, I just have to wait on the objective circumstances to be right, and then it'll take care of itself. I don't think that'll work either. I think it's a weird kind of dynamic where we have to do something in the meantime, because when the time comes, then nothing's going to happen. But I'm not sure about what to do. And that's basically with all of this where I'm trying to kind of think experimentally. And to do that, you're going to have to take risks and explore dead ends and all of that. But I think that's more fruitful at this point when it comes to thinking our situation. Again, the world is so weird. It's like, on the one hand, of course, everything Marx says is relevant because we still have this hard kernel at the core of all of it, which is MCM prime, right? It is still the fundamental organizing principle of our whole fucking world, right? That's true. But the world has also so changed since his time that mechanism of MCM prime, it's so much, there's so much more complexity with the rise of electronic media, mass media, and fragmentation of the working class and consumerization, and then you bring in social media and so on and so forth. And then you look at the new kind of technologies where, like, what is AI going to do? And no, I'm not going to, tomorrow we're going to have super intelligence. I don't think that. But even just the AI we effectively have right now, what does that do in 10, like? And so then the question is, okay, how much gets automated? How much doesn't? Well, if there's no UBI, then what do people do? Is UBI the solution? Is it not? I'm just saying we're in a weird situation where Marx is incredibly relevant. We can't think it without him, but we have to think new strategies of how to get freed from the basic structures of capital, which is MCM prime, the commodity form, the law of value, all that stuff. What is it to try to fight against that stuff now? And when we understand that fantasy is at play here, jouissance, all of this stuff, it just, what I'm going to try to do, I've got one book coming out this fall, but then in my main book, I'm going to try, to the best of my ability, to think through these dynamics and basically take what I've learned from Marx, take what I've learned from Lacan and Zizek, Baudrillard, etc., and try to think the situation anew to, the best I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a worthwhile pursuit, 100%. And I think, like Nance just brought up the phrase you used, that Dave uses, post-class fractured mass, that you were just kind of...
I forgot hold on, wait, sorry. I forgot for a long time that we're live. I just thought we were sitting here chatting.
No, we are live.
Yeah, we are live. Okay. Hi, everybody.
I don't think Dave's here, but...
That is so funny. What if Mikey said some shit and then he was like, Swol, I regret saying what I just said. Can you please remove that from the live from the public version before you post? And then Swol's all, I'm sorry, Mikey. We're already live. Yee.
What the fuck is this world? What have they done to us?
Hold on, wait, sorry. I forgot for a long time that we're live. I just thought we were sitting here chatting.
No, we are live.
We are live. Okay. Hi, everybody.
I don't think Dave's here, but Nance is here.
I was not there.
Nance?
But yeah, I mean, I was
at the movie.
One of the Marxists who thinks that the proletariat is stronger than ever today, or the working class is stronger than ever today, just because the numbers are bigger. No, I think Dave has a point. where we got this phrase from. What we're dealing with now is more of a post-class fractured mass, although there still is class. But because capitalism has evolved in a way where now the dividing lines between owners of everything and owners of means of production and owners of nothing, and that's kind of all swept away. There's 401ks, there's stocks, there's all kinds of ways that people are kind of have hands in all different parts of the economy in different ways. So it makes it harder to pin down what someone's relation is to the means of production, but where was I going with that? But at the end of the day, I think I take
And the people who have like better jobs, the better jobs they have, the more they are dependent on the stock market for their retirements, for their college funds, which means they have stake in, and that means partial ownership over the actual means of production. So it's weird. The lines are a lot more blurry. I don't know.
like a kind of an in-between. Like, I think Catrone is right, and that we need a Leninist, we need a party, frankly, and we need socialists, intellectuals to kind of organize that party. And like you said, there needs to be something. Maybe there's obviously no socialist potential today or even in the near future, but yeah, we need to be building that organization, whatever it is, now, so that when the next wave comes, we'll be ready. And I think that does have to take the form of a party in the traditional way. I don't see any other way, because at the end of the day, the only threat to capital is workers, because workers are where value or where profit comes from, and surplus value comes from, and that's ultimately the main weapon we're going to have against them. So it's going to have to happen through the workplace, through workers, even despite the fact that it is this post-class fractured mass, or at least partially. But at the same time, we can't do it the same way it has been done in the past. You're completely right there. I think we have to incorporate psychoanalysis, Lacan, Zizek. I think we have to incorporate critical media theory. I'm
glad you said that, because I was going to say it's critical media theory and professional managerial critique. They're two of the most important aspects of understanding the material conditions and changes that have resulted in the post-class fractured mass. The other part's the schooling system, which is, you necessarily get that if you understand professional managerial critique. Go read my piece in Underground Theory called Lefter Than Thou, if you want to know about that. Otherwise, if you don't want to pay for the book, just go get on the Substack. The Theory Underground Substack will be publishing that soon.
And all these, critical theory in general, really, and incorporate a deeper and wider understanding of capitalist society and workers and the class dynamics, in order to actually make change.
And here's the thing, to add what I meant to say this earlier. Part of the appeal of time energy, you were saying, like, okay, how could the left maybe appeal to people, right? So, and because the right is so good at using libidinal dynamics to excite its base, right? But they're using the logic of the scapegoat. They're always going to pin it on. And so look, the key book, I wonder if I have it here. I can check. Yep, hold on.
Dude, it's saying that the right uses the logic of the scapegoat when the left does it just as much or more is so weird. And then you say, well, that's not the real left. It's like, yeah, but like literally everybody in the United States who's left as their scapegoat. It's Trump, it's transphobes, it's homophobes, it's bullies, it's toxic dude bros, it's reactionaries, it's anti-immigration activists, it's Proud Boys, it's rural workers who don't have any education or resources, who say words you don't like, whatever. And that's just a segment of the society that they're scapegoating, but it's everybody's brother, cousin, uncle, And it's like, yeah, it works for the person who's 100% in on just rebellion for its own sake and trying to get their digs in against their parents or whatever. But it's not like, or just for people who are just like entrenched in the Democratic Party, or for people who are trying to push the Democratic Party left because that's the only hope from their position. But I mean, it's just like whatever. I think Mikey's just speaking loosely, and he's kind of just assuming the McGowan approach here, which is all valid and great. But oh fuck, I just got killed by a zombie because I was talking.
So one of the main books I would recommend who wants to learn about this is Todd McGowan's little book here called Enjoyment, Right and Left.
Yo, I ordered that book and then someone stole it off my porch.
Todd has thought through this distinction between what he'll call it right and left. Sometimes that's a little, and he and I have talked about, I'm like, okay, because sometimes the left is engaged in right enjoyment, and then that kind of, well, here's what we've got. You have particularistic enjoyment or particularistic jouissance and universalist jouissance, right? And here the difference is like, okay, so there's a way of getting stimulation from getting excitation through scapegoating a particular group, right? And this is how identity politics works. And as you've said earlier, the actually existing liberal left is as guilty of this as people on the right in their own ways, right?
100%.
And, yeah. So the thing is, if you get your thrills, if you get your stimulation from attacking a particular group, scapegoating a particular group, that is how you as a particular group are unified. You're all partaking of this enjoyment, right? The other way to get enjoyment is through a universal lack, which is to say organizing around something all of us lack in common, right? Well, this is why I think time energy is so important, is because I don't care if we're talking Democrat, Republican, straight, gay, black, white, cis, trans, what all of us, it's about as universal without doing universal at the level of logic, right? What we universally lack is time energy. We are all suffering from overwork, from exhaustion, and what could unify us is this idea of a society where all of us universally have access to time energy on some level. Like that is something that can unify, and there's no scapegoat involved, right? I guess the only enemy in this situation is the structure of our currently existing society. But that's a different enemy than pointing out a particular minority group and blaming them.
I mean, I think people have probably said at this point that I'm thinking, is this just in my head or should people actually say this? I think people have said that I scapegoat the PMC. But I don't think I do. Anybody who took that course, which is freely available, should know that is not the case. I say that the goal, like Elton said, who co-taught the course with me, he says that the goal should be that everyone become PMC. My position is, well, there's a lot of bullshit jobs in the PMC. But sure, if what we mean is, more access to education or some, more surplus time or better work weeks or the ability to do whatever, sure, in a sort of sense, like lifestyle wise, like, yeah, more people getting to have like a middle class level of life. I would, in that case, then I would go for it, even though the middle class is not just the PMC, it's also the petty bourgeoisie, which are not the same thing. But the reason that it comes up so often is because the overwhelming mass majority of social change makers, advocates, and activists are coming from college. They're in the media sphere, and the overwhelming majority, okay? And they don't get time energy a lot of the time. They don't get it. They, in a sort of sense, they might go like, oh, I kind of have it. No, you don't really have it, but also you don't really want it. Most people who are successfully or like have a real shot at succeeding within the PMC are going to go, what would I do with that? Because they're like actually addicted to energy time instead. Energy time is not time energy. Energy time is when you don't have repeatable, reliable time, but you have energy like that comes from deadlines and expectations, and it causes you to be super productive, like up until the last moment of the exam or of the group project or what have you. And that deadline that is like, it belongs obviously to like an institution that has some kind of recognition at the end of it, some kind of prestige perhaps on the horizon of possibilities. That's more important. And that's where you get your energy, and it supercharges the random moments of time that you have, and you're able to make time where it doesn't really exist by compromising your responsibilities as a friend, as a family member, as a parent, even to your own self. And, it's not easy and it's a hard life, but it pays better. You just feel your soul getting sucked away. Now, it is a common refrain, though. I don't have the time or the energy is something you'll hear within the PMC. And there's a lot of people in the PMC who really would like to have time energy. But there's also a lot of people who, when you talk about it, like their eyes get all dry and they blink and they don't know what you're talking about. Whereas with all regular working class people, they get it. So, considering that the overwhelming mass majority of social change makers don't get it, they need to understand they're not just normal workers. They need to understand they have a special kind of responsibility. They have a certain kind of radical responsibility that comes from their relative time energy privilege. And until they get that, until there's a sort of PMC consciousness raising, and it gets awkward to be in that position without doing something about it, who are you trying to convince? Who are you trying to reach out to? What are you trying to do? I see an activated and conscious PMC as more radical than a self-organizing working class workspace, blue collar, say, unionizing. Now that's great if you want to do it, and it might be worthwhile. I'm just saying. What you can do is develop yourself to the point where you're able to work between 15 different fields in the life of the mind and have conversations that humble the PMC. And at that point, maybe they'll actually listen. They'll take advice. They'll realize that you see through them. They'll realize workers know that the emperor has no clothes. They'll stop fucking faking. They'll realize. This is all utopian. This is all idealistic. I'm being a little pejorative to my own self. I'm not being fair. I'm speaking simplistically is what I'm trying to say. I'm speaking loosely. I'm speaking simplistically because I'm tired. But this is almost over, so I'll let it finish. We're at an hour and 42 minutes and 22 seconds into this video. There's an hour and 52 minutes and 50 seconds not remaining, but like in total, which means how much time is remaining? Can you just click it and have it do the math? It'll reverse that. I don't know. It's not working. It works to click it and it'll change from your phone. But anyway, the math says we got 5 more minutes basically.
Right. Like if anything, like that is the enemy, right? Is the structure of our currently existing society. So this is a different way to mobilize enjoyment, to get people collectively enjoying through a universal lack, right? Opposed to doing the scapegoating of a particular group. And that's more of the difference between the two forms of enjoyment that Todd sees operating in politics. And of course, look, the right form or the particularistic form or the identity form, right? It's dominant because it's easier. It's easier to it's simpler. It's easier to blame some group and go, they're the problem, and then, get your enjoyment from trolling them or whatever, right? It's harder to build around a universal lack, but it's.
Benzer said, do guilt politics function? I don't think privileged people can be easily shamed into sharing. Well, they've been shamed into wanting to do reparations, so I said they should fear shame and death. I'm not threatening them with death. I'm just saying that history says you're not safe when enough people are so miserable.
It's a far greater sense of enjoyment once you're tapped into it, because it actually is, it is transgressive because you're truly
And that's where I say the only problem with Maoism is that it didn't happen in the United States and that it wasn't led by people who were neither left nor right, but time energy pilled. I'm exaggerating grossly.
defining the structure of your currently existing society.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think socialists, Marxists, consider looking into Zizek and Lacan. Consider looking into Mikey's work, especially at The Dangerous Maybe. And then getting at Theory Underground, too. Like, expand your repertoire from just Lenin, Trotsky, Marx, and Engels. There's
God damn it, he's sending over a bunch of tankies. They're all going to call me a revisionist, reformist, idealist, utopian. Fuck!
a lot there, but there's a lot more outside of that, too. A lot's happened in the last 100 years. But also, you Theory Underground weirdos, you need to read your Lenin and Trotsky and Marx and Engels as well.
No, I don't. No,
I'll just say that.
Look, I'm all for. I think the more different theorists we read, the better off we are. So, look, I'm in full support of reading the whole, as many Marxist theorists as you can. Read.
There are two different kinds of theory. There's theory by people who think they had it all figured out, they knew it needed to be done, and there's theory by people who realized that didn't work. Now we need to reassess. And the people who think they had it all figured out and know what they need to do, I know how to recognize a fundamentalist, literalist, pervert when I read one, and I've read enough to know there's not a lot of brains there. There's just a lot of resoluteness and decisionism.
Read Baudrillard and Foucault and Derrida and those guys. Read the existentialists, right?
Read the right-wingers, too. We got to understand our enemies.
Yes, read Carl Schmitt. Read Moldbug. Read Nick Land. Read that. Understand what they're doing.
Anne got me.
And
look who's in the room, everybody. Hold on. All the way from Amazon. Where were you in the stream? Did you catch up?
Not up, but
Hold on. I'm going to interview you. What do you want to tell everybody about working at Amazon with an earbud?
it's kind of cool. I've had quite the whirlwind of a day emotionally. It's because I'm a woman. Yeah.
I wouldn't know anything about it. Yeah.
Know anything about being a man, apparently.
Didn't I say that on this stream?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, no, it's like I hurt my ankle somehow. You're not supposed to hurt your ankle at work, but I stepped wrong somehow and like straight up pulled a muscle or something. So I had to take it easy, and I was just stacking boxes, making pallets, I was playing real life Tetris while listening to this really great interview.
It's really good.
Really good.
I love it.
It is really good. I'm enjoying it.
I feel seen.
Congratulations.
Yesterday, Anne said that she felt more seen than she's ever felt in a movie. That's what I'm playing off of. But it was in Trap.
Trap. The little fangirl at the concert. I was like, oh, yeah, that was me when I was 12 to 15. Hello.
It's okay to be passionate about things.
Ben and all the other folks in the weird Solowski.
What's that?
Who's weird?
Who's Weird Slowski? Just a person. You don't need you. I don't think there's any reason Anne would know Weird's first name,
Well,
real name.
I know your name, not your name. I know your what's it called? Username.
Handle, yeah.
Handle. I'm gonna go sit on the couch.
She's all blah from work. Hey, you're beautiful. Thank you. Hey, but the thing is, she normally says is, if you're working at Amazon, you need to just get a goddamn earbud. You need to start sneaking it. You need to put it under your bandana, and you need to stop making excuses.
People say you're like talking about phone use, and people are like, you're like, oh yeah, I should stop using my phone that much, and like, yeah, I should stop too, and then they don't do it. Well, it's a more complicated issue. I tell like anyone who asks for a headphone conversation comes up, I say, you know what you should do? Wear a bandana on your head and then put a headphone under it. And they go, wow, that's such a good idea. I should do that.
And then you're working.
Actually do it.
Yeah, then you're working with them for weeks on end afterwards.
And you just know that I'm like not there. It's like it's the easiest life hack in the world. Why wouldn't you do it?
And
so many books this last 2 months, and I say so many. I've probably finished 4 or 5 audiobooks in the last 2 months, but that's more than most people. I've listened to 2 episodes of the Jordan Peterson podcast in the last 24 hours.
oh my God.
Yeah, the first one was with this guy who made a documentary. Yeah, now, sorry, we're hijacking the Mikey Swol stream to interview me really quick.
Pew, 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 pew.
The first one was with this guy named Stephen Shaw. He made a documentary, I think last year or in 2022, called Birth Gap, about the what is it?
It's about babies.
And not having babies. I'm forgetting what I told you yesterday. It's not unplanned pregnancy, unplanned childlessness. And how actually, even though the population is going to keep rising, we're actually facing like a crazy crisis right now that like no one's talking about because all the libs are like, oh, the population needs to go down and then we'll solve climate change. But for whatever miscellaneous reasons, like people aren't having children at the same rate that they used to, that the rate of like old retired people is going to be way more than the system can handle. So the birth rate is like this idea of the rate of newborns needs to equal the rate of people like going into retirement to balance out, and they're not gonna balance out, and it's not gonna be good apparently. So that's what I listened to, and then today I listened to
That's that shit that Malcolm Collins was on about when I interviewed him. Yeah, keep going.
and then today I listened to his interview with Mary Harrington. And it was
Oh, he talked to Mary Harrington?
yeah, it was a great interview. She brought up Illich. Like it was really interesting. Every time I listen to Jordan B. Peterson podcast because he interviews someone interesting, I'm not impressed with Peterson, but I'm always impressed with the person that he's interviewing because he just does his ideological thing, and then he talks a lot, and they say something, he goes, well, here's what I think. And then they go, yeah, I know, I see your point. And then they'll say something like based on the research, and they'll go, well, no, actually, psychologically, biologically, here's what's going on. And it's like, dude, he like asks good questions, I guess, but it's just
He's lost it.
lets them talk, and then he just says, here's why I'm right. And then they have a conversation about it. So anyways,
He spent too much time staring into the abyss and fighting idiots.
steak.
Just eating steak.
Only steak. It was the apple cider. Messed him up forever. Okay, now I'm gonna go sit on the couch. Wear headphones at your...
Oh, show the secret with AirPods because it took a while to figure this out.
Gosh, guys, I got these like garbage headphones that were piece of shit. They kept like sliding out of my ear, but I got them because they were discreet and skin color and cheap. But then I couldn't find them, I think because of a kitty cat named Ryan Gosling. And so I was like, oh, just wear my AirPods. But, like, obviously they're sticking out, and they will tell you, you can't have a headphone. But here's the life hack I found. Literally, if you take, this one goes in the left ear, but if you turn it and put it upside down, it's like the same shape. And then the thing just goes up. Headphone? Who, what, where, when, why, how? I don't know. For people whose eyes are off screen, I took my AirPod and I flipped it upside down and put it in the other ear. Anyways, now I'm going to go sit on the couch.
I milked so much extra content out of Ann just now. Like a content cow over here. I'm expropriating. Is expropriating the right word? Yeah, I think so, because it wasn't paid. Yeah, there we go. Using Nancy Fraser's distinction between expropriation and exploitation. Anyway.
It's it's the only way to be informed. And so, look, part of Look, I think part of cancellation, I think Dave said this, so I want to give him credit, but uh, part of the appeal of cancellation is just like, oh, thank God I don't have to deal with that anymore, right? It's this
Nina
weird
said
type
that
of
first.
pleasure principle thing. It's almost less jouissance than just, oh, it's relief. I don't have to deal with. And so it's the same thing with theorists. Like they're bad, so oh, I can mark them off the list. It's less stress on me because I don't have to worry about reading them.
Yeah.
But to truly understand the situation we're in, you have to engage with. I mean, so my first book is going to be on Nick Land, and it's a Zizeki. So the book is called Capital versus Time Energy, a Zizekian critique of Nick Land, and I'm kind of trying to lead by example here, where I certainly have my disagreements with Land on the level of politics. There's some ideas of his that I think are really worth tearing with and taking seriously. And at the same time, I think we have to be critical of this. And so I'm using Zizek as a counter argument in some ways. And but yeah, I mean, this is something I think that needs to be done, where you bring these different types of theorists together, and through the friction generated through, at Theory Underground, we're big on what we call contradiction conversations, or what I dubbed converdictions. Forgive me, but it's this idea of like, let's not just do debate bro shit. Like, if we want to call it debate, cool, but you're not trying to basically win. It's not rhetoric. We like to say, like, the only person who wins is the listener, because what they get from hearing two people from different views engage in a discussion is they learn the situation better. They learn what the contemporary situational contradictions in cultural views, political views, etc. are, so they're better attuned to what's going on. And so I think that is something that's just, I would basically consider that a good thing in and of itself. And so that's what we're about. So hopefully my book will be able to add something to this, where people on the neo-reactionary side will actually give Zizek a shot, and other thinkers like Baudrillard and those guys who have really influenced me, and at the same time be able to show, like, no, you, like, someone like Land is not just a boogeyman. You can actually read him and understand it, and he's not Voldemort. You can say his name. You're going to be okay. So,
All right. Thanks, Mikey.
thanks for having me on, Swol. Really appreciate it. Great talk.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, guys. See you on the flip side. Ending stream now.
Damn, that was sick. Good job.
Tight, yeah!
Good job. Good shit. All right. Well, I'm going to close this thing out in a second as well. I'll just say a couple of things first. Oh, look, the lectern's all lit up behind me. I don't remember pushing that button. How the hell did that happen? Has that been like that this whole time? I don't think so. Spencer's been trying to catch up this whole time. Spencer, by the time you catch up to this, what's up? Mikey said Anne is a total legend. I said 100%, 100%, 100%. And then I was like, wait a minute. Why are you still up, Mikey? He's an hour ahead of me. It's 2:07 in the morning where he's at. Don't you work in the morning? Oh, you don't. You don't. Tomorrow's Sunday. Oh, perfect. See, I keep getting my days mixed up. Oh, shit. It's late, and I do have... Theory Underground subscriber seminar tomorrow. Damn. Okay, we better get going then. Spencer said, the attention economy demands that I can react in time, Dave. That's a minor thing. I get a perverse enjoyment violating the rules and chatting when I'm behind and therefore not intelligible without more effort, etc. Yeah, 100%. Well, glad you stuck around. Glad 22 of you stuck around, even though it's so late. What's up? All of you must be in the United States or Hawaii, which is, I guess, part of the United States, technically. And then, what? Other parts of the world. Fucking, what else? What else is still daytime. I don't know. I don't care. I'm too tired and chauvinistic. I'm going to bed. Hey, I'm gonna roll the PSA. The long and short of it, make sure to watch the part where I talk about Mikey's seminar. There's a way to get the most out of your dollar in terms of being a part of like an ongoing intellectual milieu, one that is primarily composed of working class people with earbuds and burnt out European postgraduates or whatever. This is the place, guys. I've set the price range where it makes sense for people between the ages of 27 and 42 who are getting serious about their life, who want to make theory a regular part of their life, and want to not exploit people, and who want to actually sustain a real intellectual project and milieu. And this is where it's at. So, I mean, you're not going to find it anywhere. This is it. And its success is dependent on you, people like you. But if you're too broke, like I said, there's a scholarship. And if you're too overwhelmed with how much stuff I already put out, you're welcome. Enjoy it. You know, don't worry about it. The free people make it happen too. All right. Everybody makes it happen. Everybody's doing a great job. You're all doing so good. Okay. Bye.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of the bullshit and just want to get down to it. Big ideas, rigorous thinking, and ultimately liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation. Theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. Besides a commitment to publishing certain underground theorists and popularizing certain fundamental concepts, we have toured the United States and are touring Europe to promote our ideas, courses, and publications.
I've been reading Underground Theory.
Amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run Rethinking books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best editing collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture the scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working-class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia.
Along Whitneyville Avenue.
That warehouse worker's name is David McKerricker, and his book Time Energy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Žižek, who also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book.
Was that the attack had been witnessed. Police officers soon arrived at the scene after those same witnesses called 911.
What you just heard is an excerpt
they
from the
located
Strange
Christian and brought him
Exiles
from his house to the police
podcast,
station.
episode
Meanwhile,
23,
William was rushed to the hospital
Graham
in
from
critical
Strange
condition.
Exiles interviewed
The majority
me
of this footage
and
was
Mikey.
recently
For
released.
those who
and
don't
has
know,
never been
Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first, obviously, I have to get freed myself, so the two of us are able to do this because, you know, as Mikey said, build it and they will come. Well, I tried, and I built a website and platform. I had my own app and everything, but it's been really buggy, and it's more than one person can handle, and that's, you know what, a really good lesson for me. And so for now, what we're doing is moving it to a temporary intermediary platform until we are able to get some more serious funding. And ultimately, we want to be in a place like this, a real brick and mortar, digital nomadic mecca where people can come from all over the world. But also, the app was really expensive, and so by quitting it, I am now able to save a lot of money. And with the help of my patrons and the students at Theory Underground, especially the monthly subscribers, I am officially able to quit Amazon
Suspects often do this
and do
when
Theory
they're accused of a
Underground
violent
full
crime
time.
in order to trick
So thank you
others
so
into
much,
believing
everybody.
that they would never
This is
dare to
one
hurt anyone.
huge step forward. With that said, several subscribers did not migrate from the now defunct app to the new setup, and I'm guaranteed to lose people over time. So please, if you want to get involved, become a subscriber. If you're not even sure what this is all about but are just curious, then I've added tier 0 and tier 1 for very basic kinds of access to what we are doing behind the scenes. If you don't have any time or energy to get involved, but you do have some money to help support this project from afar, then please check out the Patreon. My patrons over at Patreon make the podcast and public YouTube possible. Thank you. As for once in a lifetime events, check out the new poster for the American Idiots Theory Underground European Book Tour. Paris, Brussels, Berlin, Vienna, Linz, Krakow, Glasgow, London, and Oxford from April 27th to May 25th, 2024. 2 events are already fully booked out. Save a
Okay, was that fucking video that was randomly like playing on my YouTube, playing over the PSA that whole time? Oh my god, and no one said anything? Everybody's too far back trying to catch up. Oh well, I'll just skip back and keep playing, I guess.
He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first, obviously, I have to get freed myself, so the two of us are able to do this because, you know, as Mikey said, build it and they will come. Well, I tried and I built a website and platform. I had my own app and everything, but it's been really buggy and it's more than one person can handle. And that's, you know what, a really good lesson for me. And so for now, what we're doing is moving it to a temporary intermediary platform until we are able to get some more serious funding. And ultimately, we want to be in a place like this, a real brick and mortar digital nomadic mecca where people can come from all over the world. But also, the app was really expensive, and so by quitting it, I am now able to save a lot of money. And with the help of my patrons and the students at Theory Underground, especially the monthly subscribers, I am officially able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. So thank you so much, everybody. This is one huge step forward. With that said, several subscribers did not migrate from the now defunct app to the new setup, and I'm guaranteed to lose people over time. So please, if you want to get involved, become a subscriber. If you're not even sure what this is all about but are just curious, then I've added tier 0 and tier 1 for very basic kinds of access to what we are doing behind the scenes. If you don't have any time or energy to get involved, but you do have some money to help support this project from afar, then please check out the Patreon. My patrons over at Patreon make the podcast and public YouTube possible. Thank you. As for once in a lifetime events, check out the new poster for the American Idiots Theory Underground European Book Tour. Paris, Brussels, Berlin, Vienna, Linz, Krakow, Glasgow, London, and Oxford from April 27th to May 25th, 2024. 2 events are already fully booked out. Save a seat at an event by getting in contact with us ASAP. Finally, the call for proposals to our conference in Mexico.
What's up, everybody? TUCon 2024 update here. It's not happening in Mexico anymore, but it is still happening on October 24th through the 27th.
The change was made because a lot of the people that wanted to attend and that were expected to attend said they could probably afford to travel if they had more time advance notice. So save up for June 2025.
If you have to choose, right? Because this one that is happening this year is happening physically in Boise, Idaho, because we have a lot of collaborators and fellow travelers and co-instructors there. But you can attend virtually for this one. You won't be able to attend virtually next year. So yeah, if you have to choose, attend physically in 2025. The call for proposals already happened. The writing workshop for proposals already happened. You can still get the links to both of those. Just shoot us a message and ask for those links. We'll get you those. And the form goes live on June 1st, and the deadline is June 15th. So if you're attending physically, let me know ASAP.
Get in on it.
All right. Finally, last little thing here is to say thank you so much to my patrons over at Patreon. The Patreon is for people who are too busy to be students or subscribers at Theory Underground, but who want to see more of this free content on the podcast and YouTube channel for Theory Underground. You are the ones who see something of value in the free content being made available here, and you want to see more of it. Your patron pledges at Patreon are a real motivator for me, so thank you so much. Especially thanks to Marilyn Lawrence, Bert Vanderkar, Carl Vanderlip, Nikolai, Sahil Kumar, Suxandra, Darian Large, Tyler Murphy, Max Mackin, Al, Algeri, Ben Rosenbluth, Atlantic Airlines, Lewis, Matt Payne, Neil C., Simon Condon, Yiz, and Schwabkinson. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, have a good night. Thank you.
And he got out of the car and he was like, what are you going to do? Tried to put his hands on my neck and everything, grab my neck. So I got him off me, and I hit him in the face a few times. He started to, like, stumble down.
With what?
With what?
What'd you hit him with?
Violence.
Okay. Okay.
And then, basically,